Oh, you know what? We're running a little late. Yeah.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Would you please join us in a salute to the flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2017 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2016, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Ms. Adams? Here. Ms. Larrier? Here. Mr. Lembrick?
Here. Good night, CC.
Mr. McGehee?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231 Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7 provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public in any meeting, whereas desire this governing body to comply with the provisions of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood, does hereby prohibit except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second. Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 8th meeting of the Maplewood Township Committee. As you know, yesterday was election day, so we had to push our meeting off to tonight. Normally we meet on Tuesday nights. I'm just going to run through the agenda briefly. We are going to have two presentations. The first is Acting Police Chief Jimmy Duvall from the Maplewood Police Department will make a short statement. Second, we will be introduced to our interim superintendent of schools, Dr. Thomas Ficara, and he will be introduced by Elizabeth Baker, the president of the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education. Congratulations on your re-election. Then after that, we'll have a public comment. So if anyone would like to speak, we ask you to come up and give us your name and address. And we'll have our monthly Board of Health meeting. We have an ordinance on final passage dealing with promotions in the Maplewood Police Department. Next, we have a number of new ordinances, one dealing with garbage dumpsters in Maplewood Village. Second is the prohibition of liquid fuel, portable or temporary heaters at construction sites. Third is a stop sign at Peachtree and Hillcrest. Fourth is a stop sign at Orchard Road and Hillcrest. And fifth is a stop sign at Laurel Avenue and Ohio. Just so you know, anytime there's a stop sign that gets put up, it has to be introduced by the Township Committee as an ordinance so that the police can actually give those tickets if someone goes through the stop sign. Then we have 10 discussion items. We'll be discussing the crane safety ordinance, discussion about granting permission to serve alcohol at the main library for the December 9th fundraising event, support of the Merrick proposal to recruit Amazon. We have another discussion item talking about hiring additional crossing guards, discussion item around forming a public safety citizens advisory committee. 6 is reconsideration of the garage ordinance. 7 is the support of extending Haiti's temporary protected status. 8 is Memorial Park Conservancy. 9 is an update on pedestrian safety initiatives. 10 is a design of basketball courts from the Open Space Trust Fund. We have 18 items on our consent agenda dealing with unredeemed checks, purchasing a police car, approving bills and claims, rejecting bids, approving contracts for safe pedestrian safety program to Clinton School, approving accumulated severance liabilities for retiring employees, authorizing budget transfers, awarding a contract for Gulf Island survey, and approving minutes of October 17th open session. After that, we'll have another public comment period. We'll have reports from our administrators, elected officials, and then we will adjourn. At the conclusion of our open session, we will adjourn to go into closed session to discuss some personnel matters. So after this, we have a little bit more of a meeting going on. So again, thank you all for coming. And the first presentation will be Acting Police Chief Jimmy Duval. And we'll ask you to come up here and hold the microphone as close to you as possible. You can sit down, or you want to stand, you can do either. Sit down, I think would be, but just move that as close as you can to you.
Good evening, Mayor DeLuca, members of the Township Committee, and Maplewood residents that are present. The citizens of Maplewood and the public in general have come to expect and deserve the highest level of performance and professionalism from the Maplewood Police Department. To the extent that the Maplewood Police Department failed to achieve these standards on July 5th, 2016, please accept this apology. Since my appointment on August 1st, 2017, I've made it my goal to improve the culture within the department. I feel that the sense of community may have been missing for some time now. My mission for the department is to restore the faith and trust we, your Maplewood police officers, may have lost. In the time that I've been chief, I've met with many members of the community. I've committed to an open and honest conversation about where I intend to lead this department in the future. I've welcomed community members to be part of the process. I have received many recommendations on training, offers to speak with our officers, and information on technology such as bias tracking software. In short, I've received community support for which I am very grateful. I intend to provide positive leadership, and with your help, the Township Committee and the members of the community, that the department will restore your confidence, and I look forward to the task. And I also want to thank all of the officers who are present here this evening as a show of support and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Dr. Ficara and Elizabeth Baker. You can come on, both come on up. And our audiovisual expert here will help you.
My side job.
Yeah.
Just on the bottom, there's a switch, just flip it to left.
That one's on already, I think.
Yeah. No. You need, no.
We'll just share. You confused him, Mr. Desperate.
Yeah.
Okay.
So good evening, members of the Township Committee. I want to thank you for hosting us tonight and for taking us up on our offer to come present to you the work, the very good work that I believe is happening in the school district with Dr. Ficara's administrative leadership. My offer to come present to you tonight came out of the coordination discussions that we've had with Mayor DeLuca and Village President Sheena Collum over the last year and a half that I think have really improved both the communication and the coordination between the school district and the governing bodies. And it was suggested, and we'd also like to accept this offer, that we come present to you perhaps twice a year as to the developments that are happening in the school district, rather than expect the township committee to come to our meetings and follow them month in and month out. So Dr. Ficara joined us August 1st as interim superintendent. I just, by way of backdrop, want to explain what an interim superintendent is. So an interim superintendent in New Jersey is most often a retired superintendent who can serve up to 2 years in a school district. And the interim superintendency provides a school district that's in a transition phase from a permanent superintendent to do two things. One, to conduct the search for a permanent superintendent, which is very resource intensive and requires a great deal of community and stakeholder participation. It also allows a school district, particularly a school district that's had flux or turnover, to bring in expertise and have essentially a wellness check of the district's programs and operations, as well as the opportunity to leverage the interim superintendency to propel the more visionary or strategic work forward. There are opportunities in an interim superintendency that are sometimes less present or less focused in the normal course. So when we learned that Dr. Ramos was retiring as of August, when we learned that in late May, we were very pleased that very quickly, because of the relationships we had developed across the state, we were able to tap into a very highly qualified pool of retired superintendents who very much wanted to be in our communities and to do the work, particularly the work of equity that we've publicly committed to. And we're thrilled to have Dr. Ficara be our candidate, who emerged through the process. And just by way of introduction, Dr. Ficara is a 40-year educator who worked his way up initially through the Elizabeth public school system, 20 years of superintendent experience, over 20 years of superintendent experience, including 12 years in Morristown, and had collaborated with our district in that capacity, and had a very successful interim superintendency in Hamilton Township before joining us this year. Since he started with us in August, we've had, I think, quite a robust mandate from the board. We've asked Dr. Ficara to look at every aspect of our operations, how our schools are run, how our business operations are run, how we communicate, how the board is functioning, how we're conducting our facilities planning, and also to really work with us to launch the very important facilities work and the major programmatic work that we need to do, not only to implement the access and equity policy, but to create the more dynamic learning communities that were envisioned by our strategic plan. So we've had a great partner in Dr. Ficara, and I believe he's also brought a tremendous amount of energy and mentorship to our young building leaders. So I'll like to turn it over to him now to give you an overview as to what we're doing, and also the segue into the facilities work, in which we will in the coming months, be coming back to the governing bodies and asking you to convene the Board of School Estimate. Dr. Ficara.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Mayor DeLuca and the Township Committee for taking the time to invite us here and listen to us. Elizabeth has introduced me in a variety of settings, always with kind words. And one of the parts that I've been trying to get an introduction to is she never fails to mention the 40 years experience. And I can't come up with a believable start age that would make me feel a little bit younger. So could you believe I started teaching at the age of 9? Thank you. So the point that Elizabeth brought up, right from the beginning, and I want to make sure I pointed this out, in my interactions with the board, sometimes superintendents are hired and boards really don't want you to do anything, don't want you to rock the boat, just kind of sit there and tell everybody everything is okay. So right from the beginning, this board never said don't rock the boat. They kind of said shake it up, tell us the truth and set us on the right course. And that gave me a sense of freedom to really tell it like it is and look into all of the areas. So I also promised to be brief tonight, so don't worry about that. So I essentially looked at 6 buckets, organized this into 6 buckets that kind of drift in and out of each other. So there's the organization, there's the operations that flow out of the organizational structure, there's facilities and technology, there's of course curriculum, cultural competency with equity and access, and community engagement. And so I'll just touch briefly on all of those and end with facilities, which is probably something that you're going to, of course, be concerned with all, but just something we can go through. I began in the summer, in midsummer, which was a perfect time to assess the functionality of the operation. Because during the summer, school districts essentially break down and then rebuild again. So you take the system completely apart and then you put it back together again. And it's a time when the system is under stress and it has to perform in its maximum capacity. So just for example, some of the things that takes place during those months, all transportation schedules have to be developed. So when you think of the number of kids who are receiving transportation in the thousands, each one has to have a bus stop that's accurate, going to, in many cases, a new location, a new school. Student schedules, 2,000 students at the high school alone have an individual schedule. That's 2,000 individual schedules. Facilities, the time when most of your serious kind of renovation work, cleaning, painting, etc., gets done, has to get done in that window of time that school is out, and we have to make sure it's ready to open and work is buttoned up. Your human resources department, probably the largest volume, definitely the largest volume it will handle all year. Your special services department is taxed and beginning new schedules and child study team evaluations, etc. And there's all the mandatory trainings that take place. And I don't want to keep going on and on. So there's hundreds and hundreds of little things and big things that take place when you're taking a school district with 7,000 students and cleaning it out and starting all over again and putting it back together again. So that gave me the opportunity to assess the operations in play and the organizational structure at probably the most challenging time of the year. It became very clear to me, and again, the board was not running from any of this, that the organization was not functioning at its maximum capacity and not functioning as it should. One of the first things that came to me was the organizational chart. So I've been in a few school districts, 3 of them larger than this district and 1 the same size. And the first thing I asked the board to change was the organizational chart to reflect that each principal reported directly to me. The organizational chart prior to that, the principals did not report directly to the superintendent. And that was very important to me so that I could have hands-on, day-to-day contact, and that a principal could have a situation, a crisis in a school, or a potential crisis, or something that they needed advice on or wanted to talk to me about without feeling like they were going over my head. And that's been paying some pretty big dividends already. So it helps the organization, the central office in particular. We want to make sure my vision of what a central office is a place where people work to support the schools, where our job is to get the schools what they need, and to support them, shore them up, and not necessarily something that is there to give them more paperwork and different assignments. Instead of them working for us, we are working to support them, and I think we're getting there. Each day it gets a little bit cleaner. The other aspect, a bucket that we looked at was a curriculum audit. Of course, we know that the curriculum is our reason for being. It's the what in instruction. it's what's being done. We found areas of weakness, and we're developing plans to both fill those weaknesses and provide professional development and better data collection, which slips a little bit into technology. So in order to improve instruction and curriculum, we use data, and we have to have data that enables us to be more intentional, and we need systems that the district doesn't currently have. So not necessarily very expensive systems, but data warehouse systems and multiple means of measures so that information is brought centrally and both at the school level and at a teacher level, so that you are not simply teaching because you feel like teaching something or because it's in the curriculum, but because it's in the curriculum and you happen to know your students have particular strengths or weaknesses in certain areas. So that's something else that we are working on and should be implementing shortly or improving on shortly. Cultural competency, access, and equity. A lot of that work was done before I got here, and there was a lot of community input into that and the strategic plan, and that is ongoing and making sure that work continues. And then also in the area of technology, we recently hired a technology director. The technology, as you know, is growing in leaps and bounds, and we're putting individual devices into students' hands, and it can't be done in a part-time job. A district this size with 7,000 students, with literally millions of emails, needs a full-time technology director, and that person will be coming on board. It'll prevent, we do have systems that fail on a regular basis and sometimes freeze up, and so we're correcting that problem as well. And then last but not least, facilities. The facilities have two major problems that hit me from day one. Overcrowding, right? And the second problem is decades of neglect. So all summer long, parents were coming into the central office, and I met this face-to-face, front and center, somewhat in shock that there was no room in the school that they bought a home in. And when they went to register for school, there was no room, and the child was transported to another part of town where there was some room. And additionally to that, so that's an ongoing problem that is festering out there. And over the summer, it was really, we felt at a crisis proportion the number of angry people who felt somehow duped that they couldn't get into the school that was down the block or across the street, and it was simply a matter of numbers. What's worse and going to impact that going forward is that the portable classrooms that are at 4 different locations are really past their life, and they will exacerbate the overcrowding problem because they are past their life and they are not worth putting money into in terms of the shape that they're in, the constant repair they would take, and the security risks they pose by being detached from the schools. When we looked at demographics, your enrollment trend is steadily up. There's a trend line from 2006 to 2000 to now, which is, we went from 6,700 students to 7,200 students. That trend line is continuing up. The demographic studies do not correlate with it. And I think that's because demographic studies traditionally rely upon births. Those births are local. And until we start trying to figure out what births take place in New York and in Brooklyn and how many are going to move here, you're not going to get an accurate read by looking at local births. So the one thing we do know is that the trend line has been continuously up for six years or more, and that it doesn't seem to have any end in sight. And people know, you know better than I do, that this is a hot neighborhood to move into when people are coming. So when you couple the overcrowding with the facilities assessment that we've been doing, and it took decades for the physical plant to deteriorate to the point that it's at now, and it's in terrible shape. There's literally millions of dollars on window replacements, plaster ceiling replacements. We had a ceiling fall down last year. Plaster ceiling, thank God there was no one in the room. Replacement of electrical systems, boilers, masonry problems that are leading to structural problems on the outside of buildings, ADA compliance, asbestos removal, and literally millions of dollars in health and safety that we have pared down to a manageable discussion tool. So we've taken literally volumes of studies and assessments, worked with the architects on a form of analyzing that information that I've districts where we list the capital projects by school, and we list the priority and the price. And the priority goes from health and safety all the way out to this would be nice to do. And so what we're working with administratively, we're just getting a handle on that, is paring it down, and paring it down in a way that the tax, very much aware that there's a taxpayer in town that feels the burden. So by way of example, in the last district I was at, we had in Hamilton, we had $260 million worth of capital projects. We got that down to 53 million. Right, so we don't have final numbers on this yet, but we will be having it in the very near future. But I want to assure you that I don't want to be sitting in front of people saying, you know, it would be nice to have, you know, a new clock tower, right? So we're looking at, I want to be looking at health and safety and some severe program needs that I think people would be in agreement with. So what we're going to do, and the other aspect of this is, I just wanted to say this for the record, and I'm sure you don't need to be reminded of it. The district has a 2% cap on the tax levy that it can raise, and that comes out to about $2.3 million. So in our budget, we can raise approximately $2.3 million, and that's somewhere in the near vicinity of what we anticipate salary and benefits going up. So there's just no way there's going to be a budget item that's going to fix 20, 30 years of neglected or deferred maintenance. The process that I wanted to just give you a little window on is that the administration will develop plans with the taxpayers in mind. I can't stress that enough. I've been around long enough not to come to you with pie in the sky and like the haves and dreams. We really want to bring it down to what you really need to spend money on, because you are going to spend that money anyway. If that boiler that looks like it's on its last legs breaks next month or next year, it's better to pay for that in a long-range plan than to pay for that on an emergency basis. And a lot of these emergency projects are not even through bids because if the boiler goes in the school, you have to get it back. So the process that we'll be looking at, keeping that kind of prioritization of health and safety to nice to haves and to critical in that range, we're going to present options to the Board of Education and then work with those options to see which ones we need input from the board, and then from there take those options out to public forums and come back to the board, finalize, make sure there's public airing of everything that we're about to do and why, and then that will ultimately come to a point where we're going to have to ask for some bonding. And that's where we are at the moment. And I also wanted to make sure that I didn't fail to mention that in the reconfiguring of schools and the renovation of schools. I can't conceive, but we will come out in some reconfiguration that also faces the problems of de facto segregation that you have at the elementary school level. And at the secondary school level, there'll be programming to correct the problems there. But this analysis is not going to be done in a vacuum, as if we do not realize that there is de facto segregation going on in the elementary schools in particular. And with that, I could go on, I know, but I don't want to take up your entire.
No, you can't. So thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Ficara at this point?
No, I'm just depressed now. The millions, it's a lot. Yeah. Mostly, is there a way to raise money for outside of like a foundation type thing, sort of like our public library foundation, to raise money for new edition or whatever? Is there?
Yeah, and I think a lot of would be nice to get some of the fundraising organizations involved in doing some of the nice to haves. Okay, so I'm not too sure how excited people are going to be about boiler projects.
No. Right.
But maybe some of the things that we have that could be refurbished, technology that could be brought in, those might be areas where we could get some excitement around fundraising.
I mean, the other, not just goal, but the one, I think, timing advantage we have right now to be developing this long-range facilities plan is that, there is anticipation with the change in Trenton that is coming imminently. There will be not only additional state aid coming out of Trenton to local school districts, but additional funding for capital construction projects for school and school construction. And so, if we have the map as to what we need, I mean, the goal would be to be ready to chase that money, right? And to apply for that money for both the deferred maintenance or eventual maintenance that every school district has to do on major systems, but also for the capital and the expansion. And as we do the expansion, Dr. Ficara can comment, but we first looked to see if there was any vacant property that was easily purchasable, not on the rolls, and not taking a property off of the tax rolls for the towns. We pursued the Mary Lawn facility and did not get the support of the Department of Education in that endeavor, and lost it to the Orange Educational Foundation. But if there is no vacant property, and I understand that Mayor DeLuca has given us a tip that there may be another property to look at that would meet those criteria, but I think we're also looking at this point in terms of what we could do most quickly within our existing footprint of land and existing property. And is there a way to grow that's healthy in terms of the functioning of the schools, while also being effective in terms of the capacity building. So that's where we are, developing the plan for both speed as well as the ability to capture public and private dollars.
I have one question for you. And thank you again, Dr. Ficara. Wonderful presentation. What timeline are you guys thinking about in terms of working with the board? Findings from safety to nice.
Probably January.
And so we would see something shortly after that.
Yeah, I failed to mention somewhere in my notes, but I wasn't reading them word for word. We will be keeping you in the loop the entire time. So, as we are about to go public with something, I'd like to make sure that you're all aware of it. But I don't want to. My essential belief on that is the more eyes on it, I'd rather have you point something out to me before it happened, before I take a position on it and get egg on my face. So the more input, the better. This is not going to be done. It can't be done behind closed doors, and there's no point in even trying to do that. I believe the more input we get, the more successful we'll be.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Just want to thank you, and I guess the word I would use is impressed I'm impressed by your experience and your work and your commitment and your willingness to tackle these issues. They've been around for a while, and I think the board is looking for some direction from you and working in partnership with you. So I think this is a good time. And if we've talked a lot about equity in the selection process and about facilities, and people are looking for us to step up and figure this out. So we need to do this together. So I think we're prepared to do it with you, sit with you as a partner in making this, taking this journey.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention one other thing. I'm pleased to say that Township Committeeman-elect Dean Daffis is in the House. Welcome and congratulations. And he actually has now begun participating with us in our closed sessions. And for discussion item number something, let's see if I can find it, the one on the Police Advisory Committee, he will be participating with us in that discussion. So we'll have him up here, up in one of those seats there. Okay, next up, we have our public comment session. If there's anyone who would like to address the Township Committee, we ask you to please come up, give us your name and address. I see some folks are coming up. There, right there.
Well, I'm Joseph D. Kelly, 20 Auburn Street, Maplewood, 50-year resident. I'm also a 45-year member of the Maplewood Police Department Auxiliary Unit. I want to thank Mayor DeLuca and the Township Committee for allowing me the time to address the governing body. I've been around the police department for many, many years and led by many chiefs, and have seen the department grow into one of the best police departments in the state of New Jersey. Now it's come a time to appoint a new chief of the department. It's my understanding, Mr. Mayor and Township Committee, that you're looking on the outside for that position to be filled. I believe the township has already has a qualified acting chief of position, Jimmy Duval, who was raised in Maplewood, Eagle Scout, a member of the Auxiliary Police, a dispatcher, commander of both the Youth Aid Bureau and the Detective Bureau. I have seen the morale come alive again under his command by involving more members of his staff in the decisions he makes. To look outside for a chief would be very expensive, non-productive, kill morale, and take the Maplewood Police Department back to the 80s, I believe 80s or 90s, when we had a civilian police director, which proved to be a disaster in this town. We don't need any more costly positions added to the department and not believe that our diverse community culture going forward. In closing, the township does not endorse acting Chief Jimmy Duval for the position of chief. There are a lot of career, professional, educated, talented officers in ranking positions that can fill this, to serve as the chief of police. Please consider to promote from within the ranks and keep Maplewood going forward in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Carla Moriali. I live on South Pearson Road, and I've been a resident since 2005. I welcome the opportunity to speak to the mayor and the town council regarding the pedestrian safety on Valley Street, in particular the intersection of Valley and South Pearson and Pearson. I think we are all aware that the conditions for pedestrians on Valley are very dangerous. I attended the Pedestrian Safety Committee meeting that was held last year in the fall. As a result of that meeting, some steps were taken. There were some additional surveillance by the police on South Pearson and Valley. In addition, there were some pedestrian devices put into the intersection at South Pearson and Valley that were consistently run over by vehicles. I personally have almost been hit twice crossing the street. And this year I have a middle schooler who is attempting to cross that intersection. I know that there is consideration by Essex County to put a traffic light at the intersection of Valley and Pearson, and I think all of us welcome that. There is no light, as you know, from Tuscan to Milburn Avenue. And there are hundreds of children crossing that intersection to try to go to Maplewood Middle School as well as to Tuscan School. Since I moved into South Pearson Road, I know of at least 40 other children that have moved onto that street, and that's just from my memory. I'm sure there are several more. So when you consider all of the other streets going towards Milburn Avenue, there's quite a few young children trying to cross that intersection. I'm really here tonight to support the appointment of a crossing guard at the intersection of South Pearson right now and Valley, because that's where the crosswalk is. The crosswalk, quite honestly, is a farce. Nobody stops. Nobody stops. You know, I have myself, in order to allow pedestrians to cross, have like moved my car into the middle of the intersection, sorry to the police department, or gotten out of the car to help the children cross the street. It is a really dangerous situation. There are several accidents at that intersection too within the last month that I know of. And I just think the time has come to actually do something about this dangerous situation before one of our young children get hit by a car. So I encourage the council to approve of a crossing guard, not just for 2017, but at least until the traffic light is put in by the county, and if not, going forward on a permanent basis. Thank you.
Just one thing, when we came knocking at your door in the campaign, you asked about traffic accidents there.
Yes.
And so I did find this information. I can share it with you, and I'll share it with everyone.
I would appreciate that.
I have 2016, we got this from the county when we did the audit. At South Pearson, there were 5 accidents in 2016. 4 of those were rear-end collisions of, 3 of those, people making a left off a valley and then people running in there behind, and then 1 hitting a car that was on South Pearson. If you include Broadview, there was another 3. So altogether, there were 8. Those are auto crashes, and there was 1 pedestrian crash. One thing we learned in our traffic stuff is you're supposed to talk about pedestrian crashes, because they're crashes also, just like auto. So there was a car making a left and hit a pedestrian crossing the street. So we do know that this is an area where we have difficulty. I just want to say one other thing about the county is the county did commit to us to put the light there, and the intersection is one of 9 that is being reviewed by the North Jersey Transportation Planning Agency, which is the funder, but we're fairly certain we're going to move forward with that. And the county did commit. There are 9 throughout the whole county, and we were told by the county executive that this was the priority one. So we were promised for 2017. It looks now, 2018, I'm sorry, it looks now that they're pushing it to 2019. So I suggested to you and your colleagues, I think writing letters to the county executive would be appropriate. We have our engineers checking with them and reminding them of their commitment to 2018, but it is a process, but I think the more pressure we can put on them, the better. So, and I think we are going to have that conversation about the crossing guards a little later.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Erin Scherzer. I live at 49 Oberlin Street in Maplewood, and I'm speaking today as a trustee for the South Orange Maplewood Community Coalition on Race. I'm also speaking today on behalf of Soma Justice. Given the schedules of many working parents, as I know all of you know, a representative with respect to the Public Safety Advisory Committee from that organization could not be here this evening. I want to thank, on behalf of all the participating groups, thank you to the Township, thank you to Chief Duvall, thank you to Township administration for the opportunity to meet last Wednesday night to discuss how, as a community, we own how we can be better in terms of our policing and in terms of how we engage with each other. It's not just a matter of the law enforcement, it's a matter of how residents also engage with each other. We were very encouraged by the conversation. We appreciated the open dialogue. We appreciate that we are starting to move forward as a community. We look forward and to the opportunity to meet in the near future, hopefully by early December. And while we want to move steadily with the process, we also want this development of a public safety advisory committee to be such that is well thought out, that it takes in all of the constituencies that must be addressed with respect to public safety. This is a very serious matter. It's a matter of life and death for our community and also the personnel, our law enforcement that is employed by our municipality. So we would like to move steadily, but we'd also like to move with careful research and to make sure that we're doing this together. As I said, we have to own this as a community. We think the next step as part of the process is to develop some sort of charter or founding document with respect to the Public Safety Advisory Committee. We would like the document to be very clear in how individuals, whether civilian, law enforcement, or other community representatives, whether through the Board of Education, are selected to join this committee. We need to be very clear at the outset of what this is. We want this to actually work. We don't want it to be a show. Along those lines, as part of developing that charter, we'd also like to discuss ways that we can better engage as a community, the way we can better engage in terms of educating our community, in ways that we as a community that wants to help, can provide resources to our law enforcement officers and to the township, so that you guys can do your job. I know that you want to do well, and you're doing well, and to be able to help move it forward and build the police department that I know you each want to be very proud of having your name behind it. And we as a community want that as well. So along those lines, developing ways, as part of our conversation last Wednesday, as many of you recall, but I wanted to state it publicly, we did discuss ways that we could examine data and how, looking at that data, we can better serve our community. Also engaging with the many resources, whether regionally or nationally, to be able to provide information to be able to enhance our services that we're able to put forward. It's important to understand that we recognize best practices of officers and of sergeants and of individuals in our community that are trying to make the community safer, and doing so in a way that we're promoting and helping all. And so that best practices and that recognition needs to be just as important as training and all of those matters as well. Along those lines, the world is changing. Issues with respect to communities of color and law enforcement are not new. But as a world, we are discovering it more due to social media and other types of resources. As the world and our community evolves, we hope as part of this charter that it's built into the initial founding document, the opportunity to grow the committee so that we are staying the cutting edge. Maplewood itself prides itself as being the leader on so many policy issues. We were the first city to advance on same-sex marriage. We were the first city on leaf blowers. We've done so much, and we hope that we can be a leader on this front. To that end, as I said, we want to own this as a community. It's not just a law enforcement matter. It's not just a governance matter. It's a community matter. And to that end, as language is being drafted with respect to the ordinance that will be coming forward, we ask that we be there at each step of the way so this can truly be a community effort. Thank you to all of you for the initial conversation last week, and we look forward to what's to come next. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hard to follow, Erin. I'm here, I'm Heather Soslovsky. I live on Porter Road. I'm part of the Recreation Advisory Committee. I happen to be here for other reasons and learn that the basketball courts are on the agenda. And I just want to point out that we have exhaustively looked into this. We've held public hearings on one of the sites that was initially presented. We've made the town come back with a zillion different drawings. And I think we should be given the opportunity to present to the committee on notice to us when this is being heard. We had no idea, and I emailed the entire committee while we were sitting here. None of us knew this was on the agenda today, and we would like an opportunity to advise, which is our role. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee?
My name is Ronnie Danforth, and I'm a long-term resident of Maplewood. I'm here on behalf of Soma Action and their Committee on Immigration. Unfortunately, just about all the leaders of the committee are not available tonight. One that you probably are very familiar with, Kelly, just had a baby daughter. So I just want to urge you to pass a resolution to extend TPS, temporary, you know the initials better than I do, actually. Safety, especially in our community. I think about 2% of the people are Haitian, and it's not really safe for them to go back, so it would be really excellent if you could pass a resolution to urge everybody in Washington to extend the protection for another 18 months.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to close the public hearing, public comment session. There'll be another public comment session later on in the meeting. At this point, we're going to move into our monthly Board of Health meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2017 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2016, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Ms. Adams?
Yeah, here.
Mayor DeLuca? Mr. Lembrick?
Yeah, here.
Mr. McGee?
Here.
Mrs. Larry?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies be open to the public, whereas Section 7 provides that the Board of Health has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public in any meeting, whereas desire the Maplewood Board of Health to comply with the provisions of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now therefore be resolved by the Maplewood Board of Health, Township of Maplewood, is hereby prohibited except to set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in deliberations of the Board of Health by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the Board of Health at all its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes. Thank you, and welcome to the November Board of Health meeting. I will, at this point, take a motion on the minutes.
I move the minutes.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Second, Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes. Thank you. Go.
A couple of items. With the Affordable Health Care Act, I've gotten a lot of information from New Jersey Citizen Action, and they gave us, they have a set of flyers which can help a person lead them through the sign-up process for affordable health care. And so we've copied that. I've actually started to give them out. And so we'll be distributing them. Tomorrow night, the Citizens Action is holding another call-in telephone conference to give us more information about signing up for the Affordable Health Care Act. The library, once again, has been very cooperative and generous in helping us. We have 3 dates, November 27, November 29th, and December 4th. We don't have navigators now, but I'm going to be at the library and at the Hilton Library in their computer room and helping anyone who wants to use the library computers to sign up. I'm not going to tell them, I'm not an expert on this, but hopefully I can help them navigate the computer if they're not computer savvy. So we're going to continue to advertise that. On December 16th, we're going to have a blood drive, and this is one of those things where the library is sponsoring it, the health department, the police department, and also a group, Essex County Legal Services. So we've all seen the need for this, and so hopefully we're going to get a lot of donors. We got a lot of donors this summer with the Red Cross blood drive, and I know there was one just this weekend at Morrow Church, I believe. So, you know, blood drives are important. There's lots of people who need blood. And I don't know if the Puerto Rico situation plays into this right now, but it probably does. So I see it almost as a patriotic thing to donate blood. And, you know, there's something many of us can do. I can't do it anymore, but any young, healthy people can. One of the incentives we are hoping to do for the flu shots, for the blood drive, is to offer a free flu shot for anyone who wants to donate blood. We're also going to have a couple other incentives, but that seemed like a good idea. And but in order to do that, I think I need a resolution from the committee for just that one blood drive to offer free flu shots.
I move it.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Be written, so let it be done.
Okay, I hope that stimulates, and the doctors have told us there's no medical reason that you cannot donate blood and then get a flu shot, so.
Is that the order, Mr. Rowe, that you would donate and then get the flu shot?
Right, and then you get your cup of coffee and the little candy they give you.
All right,
Orange juice, maybe.
all right. I just want to make sure I understand the chronology. Good.
Okay. I used to like the Twinkies. We've just been very active this month, as you can see in our report. We wrote letters to physicians that the senior program can do transportation to their offices in Maplewood. The New Jersey State tobacco law went into effect, so we'll be distributing the new information to all the businesses. And by the way, I couldn't remember if I reported this before, but this summer we tested about 20 places that sold cigarettes, and we issued 8 summonses. So,
And Mr. Rowe, is there any difference between the ordinance that we had passed here in Maplewood and the state laws? So what is changing for businesses here in Maplewood?
nothing really. The fine is the same. The violation is the same. We use our local ordinance this summer.
Right. So other than the change from the local ordinance, and maybe there's a question for Mr. Desiderio, but other than the change from the local ordinance to now the state statute, there's no substantive change in terms of what people are allowed to do or what businesses suffer in terms of consequences for failing to.
I think they're exactly the same as we did. So, you know, we anticipated what the state may do. And
I think the state followed us.
Didn't we do vapor?
Pardon?
Didn't we include vapor or not?
Vape is, yes, vape is
That's included now in this.
That was included in our ordinance.
Is it included in the state ordinance too?
Yes.
It is.
Okay.
And we're going to try to, I put a flyer in, we're going to give all the businesses, try to get them to have less cigarette butts on the ground. It's just disturbing to me to go behind the buildings and see so many cigarette butts. So, and also we're going to continue our sanitation work in the village and in the other parts of town. So that's my report.
Are there any questions for Mr. Rowe?
No more.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. At this point in time, we will open our public comment portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who'd like to address the Board of Health? No throngs coming. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We return back to the main ordinance. We're on item number 8. We have an ordinance on final passage.
Mr. Mayor, ordinance on final passage, ordinance number 2871-17. An ordinance to amend Chapter 6 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Administration of Government. This ordinance will revise the procedure for promotions within the Maplewood Police Department.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing on this ordinance. And can we get a motion, Mr. Lindberg?
I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
And I'll second that. Any discussion?
Just a brief statement, Mr. Mayor, because I was unable to attend last meeting. I just want to recognize the efforts of the police department and the township colleagues, as well as the union, to work together to find a solution that made the most sense, taking into consideration most recent events. So I appreciate the collaboration amongst all parties involved.
Thank you. Anything else? Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ms. Lourier?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. We have ordinance on introduction.
Mr. Mayor, it's item number 9, introduction to new ordinance. 2872-17 is an ordinance to amend Chapter 235 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Property Maintenance. This ordinance will add additional requirements for maintenance of garbage dumpsters located within the Maplewood Special Improvement District.
This ordinance grew out of discussions that we had at the Code Committee. Mrs. Larry, do you have anything you'd like to say about it?
Well, I would mostly say I would like to thank Mr. Desiderio and Mr. Rowe for working on this ordinance and pulling it together. Hopefully we will have a little fewer problems with the dumpsters outside of the businesses. It's been unsightly, and hopefully we will be able to rein that in a little bit.
Great. Can you move it, please?
I certainly will. I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on November 21.
Second.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Lourier?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Another ordinance on introduction.
Item 10, Mayor, introduction to ordinance. Ordinance number 2873-17, an ordinance prohibiting use of liquid-fueled portable or temporary heaters within the Township of Maplewood. This ordinance will regulate the use of liquid-fueled portable or temporary heaters, also referred to as torpedo furnaces, salamander furnaces, or simply salamanders, or any other flame-producing heaters within the Township of Maplewood.
Thank you. Ms. Larry, could you introduce this, please?
I certainly would like to. I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, a hearing to be held on November 21.
Second.
And this ordinance also came out of the Code Committee in working with Fire Chief Dingelstadt. Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Lourier?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. And we have 3 ordinances coming up for stop signs.
Item 11, introduction to new ordinance, Mayor, ordinance number 2874-17, an ordinance to designate stop sign and street and direct the installation of a stop sign on Peachtree Road at its intersection with Hillcrest Road. This ordinance will designate Peachtree Road as a stop street at its intersection with Hillcrest Road.
Ms. Adams?
Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on November 21st.
I'll second that. Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Louder?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Another one on introduction?
Item 12, ordinance number 2875-17, also introduction to ordinance. An ordinance to designate a stop street and direct the installation of a stop sign on Orchard Road at its intersection with Hillcrest Road. This ordinance will designate Orchard Road a stop street at its intersection with Hillcrest Road.
Ms. Adams?
Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on November 21st.
I'll second that. Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Louder?
Yes.
Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. And we have a third ordinance.
Item 13, introduction of a new ordinance. Ordinance 2876-17 is an ordinance to designate a stop street and direct the installation of a stop sign at Laurel Avenue at its intersection with Ohio Street. This ordinance will designate Laurel Avenue a stop street at its intersection with Ohio Street for eastbound traffic.
Ms. Adams, can we get a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on November 21st.
I'll second that. Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Louder?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Okay, we're at our discussion items. This is item number 14 on your agenda. The first discussion item is the crane safety ordinance. Ms. Adams?
Oops, sorry. Yes, Mayor. Erin Rice is not here tonight, and in her place is Daniel Ortega, correct? You want to get up to the mic and introduce yourself and sort of explain what you're doing here and what you need to say?
Thank you. Sorry about that. Good evening. My name is Daniel Ortega. I work for the Engineer Labor Employee Cooperative Electric 25. We are the labor management fund for the operating engineers, Local 825. And together with our signatory contractors, we work to secure building projects, create jobs, maintain a highly skilled workforce, promote economic development, stimulate construction, and uphold the utmost safety standards of our industry. I'm here this evening because we have been working with municipalities throughout the state of New Jersey because we have seen an increase in the number of cranes that are being used, particularly in the building of facilities that are 1.5 and 2 stories high. We're not talking about very high buildings. We're talking about predominantly single occupancy buildings such as 7-Elevens, banks, quick checks, gas stations, small residential buildings in which a crane is being utilized to move material and equipment throughout the construction site. The concern that we're having is that a lot of the people who are renting and using these cranes do not have the proper credentials that is required by state law to operate the cranes. And therefore, they are putting the public safety, putting the public in serious, putting public safety serious concerns because there have been serious accidents throughout the state of people who do not have the proper credential and have accidents while using cranes. About 2 years ago in the municipality of Cliffside Park in Bergen County, the crane operator did not put the proper planks on the roadway. And instead of using metal planks as it is a standard and mandated by most cranes of the site that this crane was being used, they put wooden planks. The crane was not a correct balance. Not only the crane broke the street, but it broke the water main, left the house without, left the half of the municipality without water, and some of the adjacent municipalities with very low pressure underwater. All of the commercial activity around the construction site had to shut down on an early Saturday morning. Restaurants were not able to open, and United Water have to come in on an emergency basis to shut down the water, fix the street, fix the water main. When the municipality went looking into answers from the construction company. The crane company, the owner of the crane basically said, we don't have any money. We don't have the capacity to pay for any of the damages. Suez United Water at the time was looking for about $5 million worth of damages. The municipalities, the company said that they did not have that type of money. The municipality was looking for $50,000 worth of damages that it cost them to maintain the street closed and police details and so on. The company said they did not have that type of money either. So everybody was left out without having to pay any of these proper damages to both the municipality and the businesses around. It's very difficult for our business to determine whether or not they were going to be doing any businesses the weekend, but just the fact that they have to shut down, it was a problem. Just like that, we have seen that many contractors have been hiring people just to use cranes in the construction sites without having the proper paperwork, without knowing what they're doing. We were doing a protest in the town of Hoboken about 2 years ago, and I saw the crane operator not knowing how to use the crane, and they almost took 2 cars that were parked in a parking lot with some metal beams that they were picking up, and they were basically just swinging them above the parking lot of the construction site. Right now, anyone can rent a crane in the state of New Jersey and take the crane to their house or the construction site and use it. And right now, the municipality basically takes into faith that the person who's using the crane has the proper credential and paperwork to use the crane.
I'm sorry, would it be legal right now for me to rent I have no experience. Could I go somewhere and rent a crane and just set it up in my yard and start doing stuff?
Correct. And as long as you're not blocking the street, if you're not blocking the street, and if you're not blocking the right of way of yourself, your neighbor, or the municipality, you don't have to inform the municipality that you are working and operating a crane within your property.
Okay.
Yes.
I did not know that. Thank you.
Correct. And that is one of the problems that we're having.
Yeah.
So if you are building a McDonald's, if you're building a 7-Eleven, and you have enough space and capacity in your parking lot to put in a crane, which nowadays we have a crane at our training facility that when it collapses the size of this stable, which is not a very big equipment. And these are cranes that once they open up, they can reach the ceiling above us. So we're talking about equipment that is relatively small, but it can have a high reach and has a high capacity. So if you can set something like that, that is a small with like large capacity in a parking lot, and you're doing any type of work within the municipality, you don't have to inform the building department that you're using a crane. You still have to inform it of all of the other work that you're using, but not necessarily that you're using a crane.
So, Mr. Desiderio, does that issue alone address your concerns before of shouldn't the crane owner be responsible for whoever operates the crane and that kind of thing? I think you were
Crane
asking.
operator is responsible. I mean, the fact that municipality didn't secure certificates of insurance with regard to it is the key to it. But frankly, if there was $5 million worth of damage, we've rarely ever required a $5 million certificate of insurance. I mean, maybe that's something we want to do, okay, but we've never done that in the past.
So why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
One of the things I don't understand, and this is my fault too, because it's signed, I don't know what a crane is. I don't know what is generically defined as a crane. Okay, could you maybe if we had that? I mean, we have a machine that's in here when they change the light bulbs.
Yeah, that's
goes
not
up.
a crane.
Is that a crane?
No.
What is a crane?
So briefly, I mean, technically a crane is a machine that has a 360-degree rotation on its own axis that can lift a minimum of 8,000 pounds. And it's operated. If you look at the proposed ordinance, when we have here, it says crane, it's identified as what it is already defined by the state of New Jersey, plus whatever is already defined by the Old Park 3. Sorry, it's been a while and I forgot. Old Park CC which is a federal government guidance as to what is a crane. You're talking about what you're talking about are those that looks like scissors that you set up, but those are not cranes. If you're talking about a cherry picker, which is usually what Verizon or your utilities will use to fix libels, those are not cranes because they don't have the capacity to pick up 8,000 pounds or more.
4 tons. That's okay.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So, in the reason why we would like the municipality to follow the state and the federal guidelines is because the federal guidelines in particular are constantly updated and are available online. So anyone can go online constantly and say, well, what it is a crane? Because as I said earlier, equipment that is capable of standing on its own has a 360-degree rotation and picked up at minimum 8,000 pounds. It's more and more often coming off the line, is smaller, newer, with better technology. So this would allow the municipality to be up to date with what the definition of the equipment is and how it could, on what it is that you're trying to regulate. The municipality of Cliffside Park, after their accident with our help, they passed their ordinance, and they actually spelled out within their ordinance what is a crane, what it is that they're considered to be a crane. It is black and white on the paper, as they wanted it to define it specifically to be, what it was that they wanted to regulate in the instances. We prefer to go with a federal government guidance because basically it would self-update without us having to come back every other year to say, well, items A, B, C are no longer considered cranes because they're up to date and they're old and they're not online anymore. And here's a series of new items that need to be amended into the ordinance. So that's why we prefer to go with the state and the federal guidance on that. But there is also the sub-park CC itself has very specific definitions of the crane and has very specific exceptions of what is a crane. And that's where cherry pickers are now there. Cranes that are used for the for tree maintenances do not have the capacity of 4 tons. They usually, can carry a tree or portions of a tree, but those are not technically cranes. There are some trucks that carry a small arms that look like cranes, but we don't consider those also to be cranes because they're just only used to carry a small equipment, and those normally don't have a 360-degree. They have probably like 180-degree extension that allows them to pick up material from the back of the truck and put it back into the street neatly. But those wouldn't be cranes either. We're talking about equipment that is big enough to carry an air conditioning unit that will be put above a 2-story building. That if it is not done properly, can make significant damage to a building when it's not properly operated.
Let me tell you a couple of things that I have to change. We talked about this last time. I don't think we can have a residency requirement.
No.
That's not going to work. Second, it says that the building department has to issue or deny a permit within 5 business days. That's a very difficult turnaround for us. Difficult. Section 2D, it talks about issue or denying the requested permit within 5 business days.
Yeah, why?
We cannot meet that.
With all the respect, Mr. Mayor, you can put as many days as you wish. In the municipality of West New York, where I helped set the same ordinance, it takes them 30 minutes to get the permit.
What, I'm said
30 minutes?
Yes. It's just a matter of the person comes in with the application, which we have a copy. I don't know if you have a copy filled out with the photocopy of the documents that they need. They come in, they review it, and 30 minutes later they're walking out with
we don't have
permit.
any. Yeah, we could use that application.
We haven't seen that.
Yeah.
The other thing is on number 5, notification of accident and safety issue. It talks about the second sentence to the end. It shall be the duty of the municipality to make a prompt examination into the cause of the accident and to enter a full and complete report thereof in the records of the municipality. I mean, we have no one capable.
Social requirement. So we're not asking the municipality to suddenly become an expert on the operation of cranes, the maintenance of the cranes. You know, what we're asking is if there were to be an accident, just to talk to or shut up the Department of Labor and have them come in. I mean, that's what they do. They immediately come in and take over the investigation if there were to be an accident or if there were to be any issues with the maintenance of the crane.
Is this the?
That is a draft that we put together of what it will be. Is
this what Cliffside Park uses?
That's what Cliffside Park, that's what West New York uses, and other municipalities we have given to them.
So what municipalities have passed this?
We have 20 municipalities throughout the state. Hold on 1 second. So we have West New York, East Orange, Cliffside Park, Little Ferry, Hoboken, Edison, Carteret, Monroe, in Gloucester Township down in Camden County, the city of.
All right. That's good. That's good. Yeah.
You know, there is a variety of suburban and urban and not so suburban, but smaller municipalities.
Yeah.
We have not concentrated on one particular municipality over the other. We're trying to have a diverse group of municipalities.
And have most of those municipalities just adopted what you presented to us, or have they modified it to fit there?
Some have made slight modifications. West New York has had some modifications after they have passed it, and that was based upon because some people decided to come in to us for the permits, and they decided just to streamline it just a little bit. They just took a little bit of, extra fat here and there, but the ordinance remains, the essence of the ordinance remains.
I think, there's a part here in the proposed ordinance, number 3, the crane operator license. It just says what you have to be to have a license in the state. I mean, I just don't think we need all this. It just seems to me that I think there is with the building that has been going on, we've had cranes here. We've had actually huge cranes here.
So here is I understand your concern, and here's the reason why we try to be so specific with this. You need to have a national license in order to be able to operate a crane. And then each state is left to its own to decide whether or not you need to have any other particular license. In the case of New York State, you need a different license in New York City as if you were doing work in Orange County, which is much more different than the same license that you would need if you're doing work in Buffalo. And that's just because of the nature of the different regions. In New Jersey, you need your national license and you need your New Jersey license. The national license actually indicates specifically what type of equipment you are authorized to operate. There are technically 3 types of cranes, plus 2 subdivisions. So most of the people that I talk to in the unions, they will tell me that there's 5 different types of cranes. And they all vary depending upon in capacity, whether or not they have to take it to the site and set it up there, whether they can drive it or not, whether it has wheels or not, whether you can drive, there are small different things here and there that makes them different. And that's the reason why we'll try to be specific with that portion of it, because we want to make sure that if you are driving a crane, you're driving the right crane. Basically, it's very similar as to a CDL, or the difference between having a endorsement and your driver's license. I cannot drive a motorcycle, so I don't have an endorsement for a motorcycle. But somebody else may have an endorsement to drive, a bigger truck, a smaller truck. The differences will be dependent upon on the knowledge of the crane operator in that sense.
But therein lies the problem. This gentleman is obviously very, very skilled and knowledgeable about cranes and everything there. I'm not sure our staff is or will ever be. So when we impose these obligations, we're imposing these on our employees to verify all of this. And that makes me concerned, because if in fact they issue a permit or a license and they haven't followed these, I'm concerned there may be some liability. I mean, I understand that the licensure of a crane, operators, et cetera, and no person shall operate it. But when we start getting into all those specifics, I am concerned that we're imposing an obligation on ourselves that we're not going to be able to complete.
The application for
Yeah,
a permit.
actually, I have one.
There you go. I think it's way more basic than you're thinking as far as, yeah.
Yes, correct. And this actually has been a concern that have been brought up by other municipalities, exactly the same situation of, our staff doesn't have the capacity. And like I said before, we're not asking the municipality to suddenly become a super expert on crane or crane ordinance. What we're asking the municipality is to collect the information prior to a crane coming to the municipality. Make sure that you have the insurance. In Little Ferro, for example, they are insurance management. They change. We have originally offered $1 million to $2 million, which is a standard insurance policy for most municipalities in terms of construction. Their management, their risk management called me and said, well, maybe we need to increase it to $5 million, $10 million because of the, they actually had an accident with a crane that destroyed a house after Sandy. So to us is, we will work with the municipality to make sure that the documents are collected, which is what we're asking for. And if there's any questions or any concerns later on that we need to work with the building department, we work with them to make sure that the information is there. All we're asking again is making sure that the documentation that is already required by law, who no one has access to, and no one is looking into prior to a crane coming to a municipality, is available to the municipality. So in the event that there is an accident, rather than the municipality having to run around to figure out what happened, where it happened, and who was responsible, you have all of these documentations already ready within your building department, so you can open up your jacket. You said, all right, Mr. Ortega is the one who requested a permit here. His cell phone number, we can call him and tell him that there was an accident. The construction company who was working in the facility, in the building, it's, this person was in charge. Let's call the person, tell them that there was an accident. So make sure that you have a much proactive approach in the event that there is an accident, rather than, calling OSHA and trying to figure out what's going on and who was in charge of the site.
Okay, so here's just a practical matter. On your number 3C, it says to be eligible for a license as a crane operator in municipality, an applicant shall fulfill each of the following requirements: be at least 18 years of age. Okay, that can be proven. Receive certification. Okay, and then C, have at least 1,000 hours of crane-related experience. How would we ever know that?
That's a state law. This is a state law.
Right, so it's a state law.
In order for you to have the New Jersey license, you have to already have this qualification.
So we wouldn't need to, this is the part that I don't get. Yeah, why do we need to repeat
what
stuff?
State law already is.
Because we have to rely on the state law. We have to be careful that if something happens and this person doesn't have 1,000, that they don't come back to us and say, you issued a permit. You should have known, because it's in your ordinance, that this person has 1,000 hours.
And that is the problem that we're having, that right now, there is a lot of people using cranes that don't even have a New Jersey license.
Well, yeah, but that's,
right,
if they don't have a New Jersey.
In here. If the requirement is that they need the New Jersey license, and in order to get the New Jersey license, they have to have that, we don't need it in our ordinance.
Well, look, excuse me. All you need, it seems to me, is they have a New Jersey crane license. I mean, the rest of this, even on the application, a current medical examiner's card, a proof that he submits to drug testing. I mean, the bottom line is he has a valid card or he doesn't. All of which doesn't make him the operator of the crane, because he can walk out the door and some other guy can jump on the crane.
Correct.
All right. This doesn't guarantee that person's going to be the crane operator. What it guarantees is that they.
Well, it guarantees that the person who gets the permit fills this out.
Well, or that the crane operator brings someone in with him who does that. I understand that.
But
and I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed to that.
Okay.
But the rest of it just is. I mean, this seems to me like a good purpose that's gone a little bit overboard, quite frankly. That's what my position has been all along. So I think we could draft something that says that the crane has to be licensed, and it has to be operated by a licensed crane operator, one who has a New Jersey crane license.
And then the
and then the rest of it, we just, it just doesn't need to be there. The fines, the insurance requirements, I understand. I'm not even sure they're high enough, but we could deal with that given the nature of it. Okay, the fines are definitely not allowed under New Jersey law. The maximum fine is $2,000. It's not $10,000 and it's not $20,000 as reflected in here. So, I mean, that's the maximum that can be fined.
Okay.
So if you let me take a crack at drafting an ordinance, I will do that. I will bring it to you for discussion, and then we can see where we go from there. Does that
Okay,
make sense?
Mr. Ortega, do we have your contact information so that we can?
Definitely, I'll leave my business
If you
card
could
with
give that to
everybody.
Mr. Desiderio, that he can,
No, the one thing that I am going to emphasize, if a few with the clerk so that you have them, do please have in there the national license and the New Jersey license. New Jersey license only says you're allowed to operate a crane, but it doesn't specify which type of crane that you're allowed to utilize.
My question is, how is our person supposed to know which type of crane is which type? And
Well, you know, the
operator.
The application will say it, and sort of just cannot operate the right crane. You just don't.
And so when they go out to the site, they're going to be able to look at that crane and say, oh yeah, that's the right one?
But the application, will require the municipality to ask what type of crane they're using, and then the operator will make sure you can just match it. It will say it there whether or not you have the capacity to do that.
I feel as though that part we can do without.
Okay, let me ask you this, just one other question here. Under safety equipment required, it said, every crane shall be thoroughly inspected by a competent designated employee or agent of the owner or leasee. How do we know that? In other towns, do they have to provide any kind of inspection?
So depending upon, just like your vehicle, depending upon the make and the model, particularly the year that the vehicle, in this case, the crane was built, cranes have to be inspected.
Oh, so it's on here, a copy of the most recent inspection. Okay.
And they have to be inspected by a third party, independent.
Right.
There's companies out there that their job is to do that. Go to a construction site and they put a sticker on the crane saying that it was inspected.
Okay. All right.
What we require is just take a picture of the sticker and submit that as a proof that the crane has been recently inspected prior to the to being set up.
Okay.
All right.
So let us work on it some more.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Ms. Fritzen, the library permission to serve alcohol on the December 9th event.
Mayor, because it's a township building, the township committee has to vote to allow the serving of wine for 1 hour at a library event, again, not being sold, only being served for 1 hour.
This is part of the foundation, of the two library foundations, Maplewood and South Orange, and the Ken Burns fundraiser on December 9th. There's a pre-event fundraiser at the library and they'll serve wine and beer there, I guess.
I move that we allow it.
And this is during
This is closed.
This is during a date and time when the library is not
Closed.
open to the public.
It's closed, library's closed. Ms. Adams moved it, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Who's calling the roll?
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Library's closed.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll let them know.
Number 3, support of the Newark proposal to Amazon. Mr. McGehee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just really briefly, colleagues, I want to make a statement regarding this bid that Newark has made to Amazon. This is a bid not just for Newark, but Essex County and northern New Jersey, and importantly, Maplewood. In your vehicle or public transportation, it's a straight shot from Newark to Maplewood via Springfield Avenue or 124. This is an opportunity to bring directly or as a halo effect businesses, consumer wallets, and residents to Maplewood that could result in potentially significant boosts to our Springfield Avenue business district when taking into consideration the addition of 50,000 jobs in the area. This bid is a big undertaking, and considering that this is being supported at the municipal, state, and federal level,
and as a bipartisan effort is significant. It is also important to us, I think, as a municipality, to support our fellow local municipalities, especially when that governing body has done the work and made the effort to improve their town or city by trying to provide opportunities inclusive of jobs. So I'd like for my colleagues to support me in putting together a resolution supporting Newark in their efforts to seal this deal and getting Amazon to Newark.
Is this Newark who applied for it?
That is correct, Newark, New Jersey.
It was a state in Newark. It's
And the state as well.
And how much?
$7 billion.
$7 billion.
I have a lot of problem with that. Not only is it an enormous amount of money, there's so much information we don't have regarding this.
So let me break down the deal structure for you.
Okay.
So $5 billion in tax incentives over the course of 10 years, 50,000 jobs. These are high-paying jobs, on average $100,000 per job. Okay?
50,000 jobs, averaging 100,000.
Correct, in salary. Number two, Newark local property, they're going to get a property tax of approximately $1 billion. And then also they'll waive about $1 billion in wage taxes for employees over 20 years. So when you think about where Newark is trying to go as becoming a hub in our area and halo effect it has in our town, especially when you think about some of the things that we need to do on Springfield Avenue, it's an opportunity for us to grow our business district, because these individuals who are going to work in this new headquarters, subsequently a lot are going to come here, and they're going to bring their wallet, and they're going to help bring our businesses up as well.
But their wallet, I mean, that's a lot of money for the taxpayers of New Jersey to subsidize for a company that may or may not bring. I can't imagine that 50,000 jobs to this extra headquarters for Amazon are all going to be over $100,000 paying jobs.
That's what they communicated. That's
right,
correct.
but there's no assurance that that's what will happen.
But
And I don't-
average 100,000. I don't know if they're going to be 100,000.
So there'll be like $1 million guy at the top and a
I don't know that.
maintenance
Do
guy.
you know
maybe.
that? I don't know that.
I don't know that. That's what I'm
Okay.
saying.
right.
So, but I looked at a couple articles on this, because tax abatements are always, on a local level, have been contentious for redevelopment projects, and it's important that we vet it out. So whether or not, there's an article in the Washington Post from a few years ago, and I'll just read you this one paragraph. Firms ultimately make location decisions based on factors such as proximity to transportation infrastructure, the availability of skilled workers, and the overall cost of doing business. Tax incentives, as the chief financial officer of Panasonic in North America said, after accepting $102 million to move from Secaucus to Newark in 2011, was just icing on the cake. Over time, they undermine the state's tax base, which means the citizens and other businesses must make up the difference, even though politicians take credit at the ribbon cuttings and nobody knows.
Yeah, but I have faith in Phil Murphy and his organization, and I think you do too, and I have faith in
I
Brock.
do, I just,
So
I have faith in them, I don't
have faith in
necessarily
the
want
new
to.
governing body that they will be cognizant of that and won't let that happen.
I don't necessarily share that faith in the.
You don't share that, I do. I think Murphy's gonna do a
No.
great job. I think Baraka does a great job. My colleagues would like to chime in, that's fine.
Well, I'm just raising it because part of it to me is if this is something to help Newark, I would hope that it would help the residents of Newark first and foremost, and I'm not convinced that this would do that.
Well, I would not say that.
Especially if the residents of Newark aren't the ones who would be taking these jobs.
Well, there's going to be construction jobs. It's going to help the residents of Maplewood as well, the people looking for jobs. So it's not just, we have to think outside of this Maplewood. I mean, this is an opportunity for us as a municipality to work with our fellow municipalities.
So let's see if we get other township committee comments. Just in fact, this $7 billion incentive has already been offered.
That's correct.
Right.
So the question is, do we want to support it?
Absolutely.
Because it's already done, so it's part of it was 200 bids they got, somewhere around there.
It was 238 proposals,
Yeah.
all 50 states.
So it's already out there, they're already considering it, and I think what you're suggesting is there would be benefits certainly to Newark, but also to Maplewood, and should we go on record in support of Newark's effort to get Amazon, which means supporting this incentive package.
Absolutely.
Did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I
Ms.
think
Larry?
Ms. Adams raised a big one for me, and that is, where do a lot of the jobs that Amazon's going to have, where do they go? Are they people coming into Newark and then driving out of Newark? And while I believe they may come through Maplewood, they may stop on Springfield Avenue, maybe. I do have a concern about furtherance of people coming into Newark, people going out of Newark, and that's been a long-standing issue of mine. So I'm not ready to jump on a resolution at this point.
But I would have to say, Ms. Lair, that you'd have to think that the individuals who put this plan together thought about that, since it is impacting their town directly or their city directly.
I don't doubt that they have. I'm just saying this is my issue.
Fair.
Did you have anything you want to say?
I mean, I think the Newark bid is a good idea. I mean, the tax incentives trouble me somewhat, but I mean, overall, I think that the bid is in. I think it would be better for them to get it than for it to go to Pittsburgh or Portland or somewhere else. And I mean, I would support the resolution. So if that's a motion, I second it. And that's about what I have to say.
I would like to just say that I do support the resolution too. I think that one of the hallmarks of Mayor Baraka's administration or tenure so far is that he is looking to try to create jobs. He has set up create jobs for Newarkers. He's set up Newark training program, Newark job centers. I think he has analyzed this and believes that this is the future as far as job creation in Newark, that no one's building factories anymore in Newark. It's not happening. And I think Newark is a transportation hub by rail, by air, by water. Has three means of transportation, and then of course road. It has a turnpike. It has highways. I think this would be a tremendous boost to Newark, to the residents of Newark. It will bring people jobs. It will bring people into Newark. It will put Newark on the map as having Amazon. And I think if you look long term, it will attract other types of businesses. These folks like to be around each other. If you look at Seattle and Portland, that whole area, they tend to hang together. And I think it is an extraordinary amount of money, but this is the wave of the future. Amazon already has warehouses in the state outside of urban areas, and this would be one. I think this is the sort of the whole argument again about where do you build stadiums and things like that. We build them in places where people aren't. And, I would have said, if you had built the stadium in Newark years ago and the Giants and the Jets would have played in Newark, Newark would have been a whole different city right now. And I think instead of having Amazon put these warehouses in off the Turnpike in Edison and those places, let's put the whole operation. And this is their second headquarters. This is not just a warehouse. This is their second headquarters. So I think there's going to be jobs for Newark. I think Baraka is on this. And I think Phil Murphy is someone who can work with Raz Baraka and push this for Newark's benefit. So,
Mr. Mayor, I had one thing I wanted to add in terms of, not just the impact on Newark, but if we're talking about 50,000 jobs, I mean, that's just a massive amount of jobs. And even if 1%, even if only 1 in every 100 people who takes those jobs is from Maplewood or ends up living in Maplewood, and I think 1%, maybe given our proximity to Newark, that may be low, but that's 500 people, and and that's 500 houses. That's 1 in every 12 houses in Maplewood has someone working at Amazon. I mean, this could be just a massive employer, and I also appreciate the mayor's point that as we see so many places, whether it be something as small as antique shops or restaurants that, you know, people want to be where the action is, and no one wants to be the first mover. And if Amazon is sort of the big mover that comes in, I mean, there's no, you know, there was no great magic to Silicon Valley other than it was close to a lot of highly educated people, and then it became the hub. And I think if Newark can become that kind of hub for these new economy jobs, that's great for Newark, and it's great for the whole region, and the rising tide will lift all boats, including ours here in Maplewood. So, you know, so again, I just reiterate that I would second Mr. McGee's motion. I would support the resolution, and I guess then the question for us is if we're divided on this, if that's something we want to do as a governing body to support it despite division.
I mean, don't get me wrong about.
I mean, you always, just on that question, 3-2 is what makes this engine go, so.
Right.
Right, no, you know,
Well, clearly the votes are there, and that's fine. I balk at the number. I think the number is an insane amount of money. If you give $50,000, divide 50,000 into 7 billion, you've got like 140,000 per person in Newark right there. But I'm just saying, it's just, and I understand, and I hope I'm totally wrong, but it's just a lot of money that's going to be on our backs and the taxpayers in New Jersey's backs, and we still need a tunnel into New York. So I have, you know, I'm not sure this is the best use of that money, but whatever.
Anything else? We have a motion on the table to support the bid by New Jersey and Newark and New Jersey to attract Amazon to Newark. It's been moved and seconded. If we've exhausted the conversation, let's call the roll.
Let's call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
No.
Ms. Larrier? No. Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Passes 3-2.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to invite Mr. Daffis to come up.
How are you going to do? How are you going to do what you just did? How do you want to? How do you want to?
We need you to memorialize a resolution.
Well, okay. Well, then you need to give me.
Yes.
You need to give me the language that you want in the resolution.
You can send it to him electronically, then we can put it into a resolution.
Otherwise, it won't get.
Yes.
And then once it's memorialized, what do you want to do with it?
We'll send it to the mayor, the governor-elect, and the Amazon people.
Yeah, send it to Jeff.
Yeah.
Okay. You'll tell me all of that. Okay.
See ya. Mr. Mayor, I believe item 4 is for the remainder of.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. Mr. McGee, you have number 4, the additional crossing guards.
I do. And first, before I get started, I'd like to read some prepared remarks from a resident who was unable to make it this evening due to a conflict. But Kathleen Bailey, a 14-year resident of Maplewood, who lives on Broadview. She's the former co-president of the Maplewood Middle School Home and School Association. Currently, she's still active in the HSA as well as the Tuscan PTA, and currently serves as Vice President Executive Board of the President's Council. But most importantly, she's a concerned parent, pedestrian, and community member. As we've heard earlier this evening from another resident who is here, we have a significant issue on Valley Street by Pearson Road. And at this point, there are 2 things that are of interest to our residents here in Maplewood, and that is a dedicated crossing guard and eventually a permanent traffic light. Now, as we already talked about tonight, unfortunately, the traffic light is not a short-term solution that we can address. However, the addition of a dedicated crossing guard is something that we can address. Since we have passed November 1st, we have the option to reallocate funds to subsequently pay for a crossing guard. And in this case, I'm proposing 3 because there have been 3 requests for crossing guards in areas to help protect our residents, our children, and our commuters. When you think about Valley itself, you really think about 767 lives,
of children, 600 lives of children in Tuscan. And it's very important that they have a sense of comfort when they try to cross that street, either coming from College Hill to cross the street to go through Gulf Island to go to middle school, or leaving Gulf Island to cross the street to go to Tuscan. Acting Chief DeVos provided me with some numbers, and essentially, if we were to approve tonight the cost of 3 crossing guards, which would start basically end of this month through the end of this year, the total cost would be $3,614.15. $3,614.15. So we can give our residents the common knowing there'll be a traffic guard there at these various intersections for the rest of the year. So I ask my colleagues to support me in that reallocation so we can have those 3 crossing guards.
I will second that. Let's have a discussion.
Where would they be? Sorry, did I miss?
So one is on Wyoming, the one that you, Mr. Limerick, you were talking about. The second one is what I'm talking about in Valley, and my understanding is another one that's close to Seppoyden.
Where on Wyoming?
It would be on the road that goes down to Jefferson.
I think that's correct.
Euclid, yes.
Euclid. Even if we don't, the point is though, is that we have residents who have emailed us, called us, reached out to us and say, hey, do something about this. And this is our opportunity for us to take action.
The other one is at the corner of Burnett and Springfield Avenue, where we have that triangle of crossing there behind Walgreens, which becomes a problem. The crossing across Springfield is governed by a light. So I would imagine a crossing guard would do some of that, but it's primarily for those 3 crossing behind that area there. Go ahead.
It would be $3,600 from now until the end of December. So then there would be some sort of budget allocation in your budget process next year to make sure that those crossing guards were there from January through June, I'm going to assume?
Right,
Yes.
that's my question.
Well, from January to December.
Oh, yeah, well, from January, for next year.
Yeah,
going
so
forward.
January to June and September to December.
Yeah, but we budget for the year, so it would still cost. So yes, it would be an additional. It's $3,000 for 2 months, and you're talking 10 months, right? So you're.
Okay, that would be my only concern, that suddenly there's no crossing guards where there were last month.
No, understood. I
Yeah.
think just because of the way that it's stipulated, we could only approve
the money for.
So has the chief weighed in on this, the acting chief?
Yes, in fact, the chief provided me with this information, and he's in favor of this.
He's in favor of 3 new crossing guards at these
Absolutely.
locations.
In fact, he said they'll be trained and ready to go by November 20th, the start date.
And I think he emailed Ms. Bailey to that effect as well, right?
That is correct.
Right. He's taking the position that if we put the crossing guards there, he agrees that it will improve safety and he'll make it work.
My only concern was the budget last. for
Yeah,
next
and the
year.
budget for next year
Right.
and going forward.
Well, presumably, when we get a traffic light on Pearson, that will govern the pedestrian flow there.
Well, hopefully, we have crossing guards at other intersections that also have traffic lights, though, so.
We have a situation at Pearson where no one stops there.
No one's there.
Right, I know. If I, just as a comment, I mean, I'll support this, but just as a comment, if I lived in that area and I had the option of crossing in what is strongly perceived or in reality is a dangerous crosswalk, I would walk on the east side of Valley Street all the way to Tuscan and cross there to go to the middle school, because it's really not that much farther, if it's farther at all. But I mean, I'm just saying.
You can tell the residents that.
No, I just did. I'm
Okay.
just saying there's options too.
I think we have mentioned that.
We have mentioned
In another
that.
meeting, we actually mentioned that to one of the public
Right.
commenters.
Because, I mean, that's what I would do as somebody who's, you know, raised 5 kids. This is too dangerous, walk on this side and cross down.
Probably those residents don't want to have to do that. They want to have the ability to cross that street.
I understand that.
Okay.
It's
Don't
also,
necessarily agree with
it's also, you know, we put a crosswalk there because we analyzed it and we said that it is, without a crosswalk there, then there's no crosswalk from Milburn to Tuscan. And we put a mid-block crosswalk, we put a crosswalk there. We were hoping people would honor it. They're not even close to honoring it. I don't know the situation in Wyoming. There does seem to be some problem because we have a lot of drop-offs on people dropping off, parking on Euclid and walking across. It's difficult. We have, and then this other thing that the chief identified of Burnett and Tuscan is a problem. So, you know, we're talking about pedestrian safety. It's a lot of our attention is devoted to it. So I think that's why I seconded it. I'm in favor of moving forward and trying to, on a short-term basis, at least Pearson, provide some safety there.
I do have one other thing.
Yes.
Is there a parameter, because just like we have parameters for traffic calming on streets, on residential streets, we have a whole, you know, application type list to go through. Is there a like a sort of a checklist or a process that the chief goes, the police department goes through to make sure that everybody's following?
And I will say, just for transparency, they did a study of South Pearson in 2016, and it did not warrant a crossing guard.
And that was,
but just want to say, I'm talking to the chief. We really don't. I think we have it on Wyoming and we have it on Burnett. They do counts. He actually talks about, he parks a car there, and there was a car there at South Pearson today, and they count. I think the residents are saying something very clearly about South Pearson, that people are avoiding it because it's too dangerous. So the counts are skewed.
That's correct.
Because the commuters don't want to cross there. People going to the village don't want to cross there and walk through Gulf Island, which is reasonable to think that they might want to do that. Students, because no one's crossing there because it's too dangerous. So I think putting a crossing guard there will give us a better number to see how people actually cross.
Absolutely.
So then, are you saying that perhaps put the crossing guards there and then do the study?
No, the chief is doing the study right now.
Oh, okay.
So we'll find out. I mean, listen, if the crossing guard's there and says, I'm here all morning or all that, you know, whatever, and nobody's crossing, we'll know that too.
Right.
But I think the people on Broadview, people on South Pearson, people who might be walking down from, you know, Milburn Avenue through some of that area, Ridden Road and stuff, they're going to feel more comfortable if they see that someone's actually stopping the traffic. They might feel comfortable walking that way.
And Mr. Mayor, right now we're talking about, I believe, basically a 6-week commitment.
Correct.
November 20 to December 31. Yeah, 6 weeks.
But let's be real, it's going to take longer than 6 weeks. So I mean, we're really making.
Oh no!
Making a bigger commitment. It's got to go into.
But I'm saying what we're voting on tonight.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. The $3,600. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a motion that's been moved and seconded to, and Mr. Manning, we're okay with this, right? Okay. Thank you for yelling. So we have a motion moved and seconded to add 3 crossing guards to the streets we talked about. Let's get a roll call. Ms. Fritzen?
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ms. Larrier?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, now Mr. Daffis, if you can come on up here. This is the Public Safety Citizens Advisory Committee. We invited Mr. Daffis to come up because this is going to be a conversation that probably will extend into 2018 when he's serving on the Township Committee. So if there's anything you'd like to add to the conversation, feel free. Mr. Lembrick, do you want to stage this conversation for us?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. And this is a follow-up to, I mean, I think I put almost the identical discussion point on a few months ago when we were still meeting over in the Police and Courts building. And that is, here in Maplewood, we have citizen advisory committees for many other things, everything from senior citizens to the environment to the swimming pool. But what we do not have is any sort of, aside from the Township Committee's Public Safety Committee, public and particularly citizen input into our law enforcement and our public safety. And these are departments that are our two largest budget items every year. This is where most of our municipal tax dollars are going into these departments. And these departments have enormous powers granted to them. They're consistently interacting with our residents, sometimes during very challenging moments in their lives. And I think it is important, in fact, I think at this point imperative, that residents have input into the direction of our police department and our fire department. So I would like to propose the formation of a public safety citizen advisory committee. The role of the citizen advisory committee would be to provide advice to the police department and the fire department on policies, on training, on community outreach, on ways to implement and follow best practices. This citizen advisory committee can be a conduit between the public and our law enforcement and public safety officials. And I'm envisioning that they would be an advisory committee to us as the Township Committee in terms of dealing with public safety issues, but also to a source of advice to the Maplewood Police Department and Maplewood Fire Department. We've discussed that they can help to look at data, to analyze the data, to help collect data and figure out the best ways for us to make data-driven decisions, to make recommendations in terms of training, and to provide an extra set of eyes and extra transparency and accountability when it comes to reviewing public safety reports, crimes reports, incidents, to recommend policies, training guidelines, and yeah, I think this will go a long way. I think it's overdue, but I think particularly at this point where we have a gap in terms of the trust and faith that our residents, or at least many of our residents, particularly our residents of color, have following the July 5th, 2016 incident and the aftermath. I think it's crucial that we bring our residents into the process so that we can help rebuild and restore trust and confidence in our law enforcement in this community. One thing that I would like to reiterate from the first time we had this discussion is that there obviously are certain legal limitations that would be placed on this. Obviously, the Township Committee cannot delegate to an advisory committee authority that we ourselves do not have. We cannot create a civilian complaint review unit. We can't make residents part of the IA process or other internal police department procedures. That's something that actually Newark tried in the last couple of years, and the courts struck that down. The model that I'm looking at South Orange has had a public safety advisory committee that has focused a little bit more on neighborhood watch and helping plan community events, including National Night Out and other ways. And I think these are roles that the Public Safety Citizen Advisory Committee could play, but I'm looking for something that would be broader. And the model that I've looked at is the one that was started just a few years ago in Jersey City, where Mayor Fulop and his council were looking to do something similar to what we're doing, which was bring citizens into the process in response to concerns, both national and local. And obviously, there's going to be discussions that are going to need to be had about how are we going to choose who's on this committee, the exact parameters of this committee, and it may need to be something that evolves over time under our guidance. But I think this is something that the community groups that we met with last week strongly desire. It's something that I hear from residents is something that would be of interest to the community. I've spoken with Chief Duvall both before last week's meeting, and many of us heard from him at last week's meeting that he is supportive of this, particularly to the extent that either through this committee or maybe adjacent to this committee, we could have a youth committee of teens and other youth here in Maplewood who could advise the police and work to provide, sort of bridge that gap between the police and the community. So that's the direction that I'd like to see this go. I know there's more discussion to be had before we start formalizing, and then a fair bit of formalizing to do before we actually start appointing people to this committee, and this committee can start meeting. But I would like to start moving this forward, and the time is the time is actually before now, but we can't do it before now, so the time is now.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to respond to a couple of things. Of course, we looked at, you provided us with the Jersey City executive order, so thank you for that. I also took a look at the South Orange committee, which seems to me totally inadequate for what we're looking at. It's more like we have our public safety committee. One thing I want to say is that I don't think that this committee should be with the fire department. I think it should just be with the police department. That's the focus. The fire department, if we consolidate it, will have plenty other managers around, and I think people just care about putting out fires. I don't think that this should replace the Public Safety Committee or the Township Committee, because that is the entity that's going to meet directly with police and fire chiefs to talk about policy issues, budget issues, and things like that. Some of the difficulty I had with the Jersey City order is that it makes the chief, or the police director rather, the chairperson of the committee. I don't think we heard loud and clear that we don't want that.
Well, should be. And we don't have a police director.
Well, but even if we had a chief, I mean, so we want to make sure, I think we talked about that we'd want liaisons, and when we talked about this on the 19th, Mr. McGee, he talked about having a liaison. We talked about this September 19th. You were not here, Ms. Adams, so we had the benefit of having this conversation before. This talks about, I think we need to be very clear about the incidences of reports that would be given to them. What the Jersey City order talks about everything being appropriately redacted. So I think we have to really think about what's the role of this committee. I would agree with the comments of Ms. Scherzer before, that we have to really understand what we're looking to do, because if we put people on this committee and all of a sudden they're getting documents that are totally blacked out, that's not going to work. That's going to create more distrust. The other thing here is that we have to be very clear about the collective bargaining agreement, which talks about here. Talks about civil service, but there's also the PERC, Public Employee Relations Act. We've got to look at that. We've got to look at the collective bargaining agreement that we have with our police department, with our police unions. So I think this is a step in the right direction. I'd like to see some other models than just the Jersey City model. And I don't think we had any that were surfaced at our meeting last Wednesday for this. I think we found out other models, the Philadelphia model for the Civilian Affairs Unit, but I don't think we heard of others. But I'd like to see a couple other different kind of models that would allow us to create an advisory board, accountability board, or something that would be a little different than what I see in Jersey City, and I don't think it's what they have in South Orange. I think it has to be completely different than that. So
And
we have a lot more.
I would agree with you that, and just to clarify, that my proposal is that the Citizens Public Safety Committee would supplement, but certainly not supplant, the Public Safety Committee of the town.
Right. Okay.
Does the acting chief weighed in at all on the?
Yes.
Yes.
Supportive.
Yeah, he's supportive, but I think,
I just.
I think it's all in the details.
Yeah, that's.
Everyone's supportive until you say,
They want to do
this is what they're gonna do, because if you remember, when we had the meeting the other night, there were instances of, well, what happens if a citizen wants to come before the Citizen Advisory Committee and make a complaint?
Right.
Is that appropriate? There's nothing in the Jersey City board that would allow that to take place. Certainly not in the South Orange board.
Oh, right.
So is that an appropriate role? If that's an appropriate role, are we violating the collective bargaining agreement? So those are the things we have to figure out. And that may be where the acting chief might say, oh, I like the concept, but I don't like AB. I don't want to speak for him, but,
Right.
I think when we get down to the details, we're going to have to do a little more negotiation.
So how can we get down to those details? What's the next step? Because I feel like we need something more to react to, maybe a little more research or something drafted up.
Well, I think I would agree. Did you?
Well, no, I've heard Citizens Public Safety Committee, I've heard Citizens Public Safety Advisory Committee. I would urge that we make sure it is an advisory, that be part of the title. But I'm with Ms. Adams. I think if we could get some other, I would imagine that the acting chief could actually probably find some for us.
I think we need to find
Or
them.
we need to
Right.
find them, yeah.
And I would, the Newark one, Mr. Lambert, is actually being litigated right now. And this is Mayor Baraka pushed this through, and they actually, which was requested by the folks we met with, to have nominees from organizations, they actually built representatives from community-based organizations into that accountability board or civilian review board, whatever they're calling it, because my old organization has one of the seats in the Ironbound, from the Ironbound. So I think we ought to look at that, and even though there's conflict there about whether it's going to be implemented, there might be parts of it which we would want to pull for us.
So, Mr. Mayor, what I would like to do is hopefully for the November 21st meeting in a little under 2 weeks would be to find some other examples, distribute them beforehand and come back, and maybe we can continue this conversation and see how we might want to take a little bit from City A and a little bit from Town B.
That would be good.
But I do agree with Ms. Adams, that we need to at some point start also moving this forward and figuring out what the process would be. And the most recent precedent that we have that I'm aware of is approximately a year ago when we created the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee. And but I also agree with what Ms. Scherzer said before, that The document that creates this committee, probably more so than the Senior Citizen Committee, is going to need to be very explicit in terms of what the goals are, in terms of what the powers are, in terms of what the expectations are going to be. And also, as Mayor DeLuca was just suggesting, perhaps provide some specific guidance about who the residents will be, who we're going to be appointing to this, and whether certain groups will sort of have a representative or a delegate to make sure that we're pulling in the stakeholders that have been working closely with us in partnership to move this forward.
I agree, Mr. Limbrick, in terms of grabbing several examples and having them distributed. And then, as we talked about, meeting with the community organizers either in the first week of December or the last week of November. We'll have a conversation on the 21st, but then we have some substantial information which we can have and share with them to continue that dialogue, because Ms. Scherzer talked about community involvement every step of the process, and that would fulfill that obligation very much so. So I think that's the right direction, grabbing more information from other towns, municipalities, and see what they've come up with, and putting together our own document based on those.
Right.
Okay, so who's going to do that, Greg?
I'm going to do that. However, if any of my colleagues sitting up here or
Yes.
anyone in the public sitting out there,
I'm happy to help in that regard.
Yeah,
I've actually done a lot of research on this, and I'd be happy to provide models from other cities and towns.
Have you seen anything that you want to mention now that?
I think our approach should be tailor-made to our specific situation, using the approach that you talked about earlier, which is a little bit from this city, a little bit from that city. I agree that it should be advisory ultimately, that the committee should not have its own investigative powers. But that being said, I think it needs to have some teeth. And the Jersey City model doesn't have any teeth at all. I mean, if we go through this extensive process and it doesn't have any teeth, then we might as well just not do it at all, which clearly the community wants it. And based on our conversations with Maplewood Police and the acting chief, there's incredible goodwill on their end to find a common ground here. And if we put something together that has no teeth at all, I think we're going to squander that goodwill. We're going to be back to square one.
Right. Well, and
You only have a few teeth,
but
probably.
I guess what do you mean by teeth? I just want to.
Well, again, only using the Jersey City model that we have before us. And I recognize that you're not saying we want to adopt this per se, word by word. Everything in it, in terms of what the committee has access to, is it's implied that these are that this is data and information that's just automatically supplied to the committee. The committee cannot request specific data that it may decide is relevant or pertinent. Or it also implies that it can only have access to data that currently exists. And we had discussed at our meeting the possibility, and the acting chief was on board with creating new data management that would, again, be very specific to dealing with the issues that we were talking about. So, I mean, what are the crime reports exactly? And what are the public safety reports? That's very broad, and we already do that with our public safety committee. So again, that's what I mean with respect to.
No, I appreciate those specifics.
Yeah.
But the Newark model,
Review boards, civilian review board.
okay, the Civilian Review Board, is that the board that pulls from existing organizations?
Yes.
Do they pull sort of at-large people?
Yes.
Okay, because that would be a concern of mine.
Yeah, no,
Not everyone is a member of
No, so I
an
think
organization.
I think
They're
what
stakeholder development
I think
plan.
La Casa has a seat, Ironbound has a seat, there's maybe one other group that has a seat.
Okay.
And the mayor they don't get to appoint. I think that's the other thing, is that it's not that the organization appoints someone, it's that they may recommend someone from their organization and the mayor makes the appointment. And then there's at-large seats. I think Larry Ham is an at-large seat, for example.
Right.
That's going to be an interesting committee.
Right, and and I think that this is not a statutory thing like the planning board or library board, so I think this would be an entire township committee.
Absolutely. But let's not, I agree, Mr. Daffis, about the goodwill. But sometimes when the rubber hits the road, that will goes, this has to be sound, and really have to take a look at that collective bargaining agreement so that we don't get jammed up with grievances or a lawsuit or something.
Mr. Desiderio, is that something that you would take a look at, or is that something that Labor Council would take a look at? Okay.
We would take a look at it and make sure that, and listen, you may want to get to the point where you want to engage some with the union itself with regard to some of it, but if you can get buy-in, that would obviously be helpful.
I think that's right.
So we can certainly try that.
And we want this to be a collaboration. I don't think any of the community groups we met with last week, or anyone in the community I've spoken to, wants this to be an oppositional process. I think we're looking for this to be cooperative and collaborative, so that the community and the governing body and the police can work together towards improvement, not work in an adversarial way.
Right. Understood.
So why don't we have a meeting on the 21st, the Friday before is what, the 17th? Who knows? 17th. Why don't we say, let's try to circulate information on the 17th. We're also going to be at the league as we're talking to colleagues down there from other towns. If we hear of this, there will also be sessions on police community relations. So if we can pick up some stuff there.
Are you doing?
I'm doing a different session on pedestrian safety. So let's commit to sharing whatever we can by the 17th with each other.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Great.
While I was sitting, Mayor, there was a request if there could be a comment from the public on this topic, since they've been waiting. That's up to you.
Yeah, public comment's coming up after, so we'll just have to wait. I really don't want to open it up again. We really don't do that. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're set with this?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Agreed, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is the reconsideration of the garage ordinance. We had this on the agenda, and it failed to pass on July 18th. It was a 2-2 vote, and this would eliminate the requirement for a garage. And one of the concerns we had was we were concerned that people would tear down garages and build bigger houses because we did not have a restriction on total land coverage. But now we have restriction on total land coverage. So we kind of, at that time, put the horse before the cart, so to speak. We closed the garage door too soon. This time we now have total lot coverage, so we're talking about bringing this back. This was a recommendation from the zoning board that went to the code enforcement committee and came out as a recommendation from the code enforcement. So all we need to do is ask Mr. Desiderio to do this and introduce it at the next one if we have a vote to do that.
Garage.
This is the garage ordinance.
No, I understand. We want to
Not require it.
We want to allow the.
We want to reintroduce this ordinance.
Okay, what was the ordinance number?
I don't have it.
Okay.
Yeah, I can give this to you if you want it. Okay. But we need to, first of all, we need to have a motion to instruct you to do that.
I would move that we ask Mr. Desiderio to do that.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to reintroduce the ordinance on garages that failed to be passed on July 18th, 2017. So moved and seconded. Any discussion?
So this is just to bring it back for reintroduction?
Correct.
Okay.
This is just to instruct Mr. Desiderio to bring it back for consideration.
Gotcha.
We have another public comment period coming up in a few minutes if you want to wait. Okay. Ms. Fritzen?
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Okay. Next up, resolution in support of extending Haiti's temporary protected status. I drafted a model resolution based on information that was sent to us by Soma Action Immigration Group. This will affect people who live here, who are from Haiti, and also will affect their family members who may be living nearby. This is going to be decided soon, and I offer this to you as a resolution.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
I think it's a great idea. Thank you for taking the initiative.
Thank you.
Move this back. Please call the roll on this resolution. You have it, right? Okay, I sent it to you. Okay, I'll send you another one.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Make it easy.
Dwyer? Yes. Mr. Lundberg?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Okay, next up, we have the Memorial Park Conservancy. This is entering into a partnership with the Conservancy. We have been meeting with the Conservancy. They have drafted a resolution entering into a partnership. There is still a question about the insurance requirement. We require $1 million liability insurance. And I think we should move forward with this, with that requirement. And I think the problem they have is they don't have the funds right now to pay for that insurance, but we did say that the township would work with them. We would work with our insurance
Yeah, can't we?
person.
Can't they be under us?
No, they can't be under us because they're a nonprofit. It's a separate organization.
I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, it's a separate nonprofit.
I understand that that's true, but I'm not unsure that the nonprofit I work for is insured under the city's insurance. So
Okay.
that's what I'm saying.
All right.
Yeah, because that would make it easy.
Okay. So I guess the global question here is, are we ready to move forward with designating the Memorial Park Conservancy as our partner for Memorial Park?
I'd like to
Yes.
add to that. Already the Conservancy, the members who are working on this project have been active in addressing some issues with working with a Rutgers intern who did a whole layout for part of the park. There's just a lot they're moving forward with to pay attention to something that we just don't otherwise have the staff or the wherewithal or the expertise, and there's people on this conservancy with expertise in plantings and trees, and they've also gone to the Central Park Conservancy and the Newark Branch Brook Park Conservancy. So they've really done a lot of homework on this, and they're learning from larger organizations. But so I would urge my colleagues to support this, because I think they'll make a big difference in what's now a little bit tattered.
Yeah, I would agree with Deputy Mayor Adams. They were at the Green Day. They had their information out there. They were sharing it. They were willing to have an in-depth conversation. They showed a vested interest in.
Everybody okay with moving forward with this? Mr. Desiderio, I sent this to you too. I think it's in there. It's in the packet there.
I think he blocked your
Okay.
email.
Okay, so it's the one, so we can do the resolution and then we can work with them on the liability insurance question.
Mr. Desiderio, spam filters are working exactly.
I know, he blocked you.
Yes. Okay, so next up, number 9. You can put this on for the next meeting, okay? Okay, thank you. Pedestrian safety initiatives. I just wanted to report, we had 2 very important meetings in the last 10 days or so. The first, we had on October 26th, we actually did something called a road safety audit on Valley, where we met here with consultants from the Department of Transportation, engineering groups, the North Jersey Transportation Planning Agency, South Orange, Greenman Pedersen consultant company. And we actually left here, we talked in broad strokes about Valley Street, and then we left here and we walked with safety vests on, up and down Valley Street, stopping at every corner, looking at everything. We're finding some very creative solutions. For example, at the Crescent, which has that very long crosswalk along Valley Street, is to, we've now moved the crosswalk back about 10 feet. But the problem is, as cars whip around that corner, they can't pick up the pedestrian because the pedestrian's not on the corner there. So we're talking about maybe doing a mid-block island there so you could walk out, be in the island, and then walk across the things there. Talked about sidewalks on the east side of Valley Street. We talked again about reconfiguring the Baker Street intersection, the Tuscan Street intersection. Talked about another mid-block crosswalk somewhere around Summer. A light at Pearson. Talked about signage. We talked about a lot of sidewalk stuff, changing the traffic lights there. So they are going to be coming up with a report and making some recommendations. The county, meanwhile, is still going to pave it next year. So the entire road will be paved. And we hope that they will do the reconfigurations of Baker and Tuscan at that time. And then once this report comes, then it'll be used as the basis for additional funding from the federal government through the North Jersey Transportation Planning Agency. What they said is this road audit is actually the tool to get that kind of funding. So that was a good effort. You know, I think we've impressed upon the county how very important it is to focus these pedestrian safety initiatives on Valley Street. So the second meeting we had was on November 2nd, where we met. This was our meeting with a firm called NV5 and the New Jersey Department of Transportation, and this focuses on Prospect Street. Prospect Street, Valley, Burnett Avenue, and Ridgewood in Wyoming. Ridgewood in Wyoming, they're going to do lighting surveys to see if it's properly lit at the crosswalks, to take a look at that. Burnett is a slowdown, looking at slowdown traffic. It's a difficult road because it goes from 40 miles an hour in Union to 25 miles an hour in Maplewood. And by the time people pick that up, they're almost at Springfield Avenue. So they just fly right down that road. So there's talk about that. We had 3 citizens at that meeting. We set up a steering committee, and that was very helpful. We talked a lot about the challenges on Prospect. So these consultants are going to be doing a lot of studying up there. They're going to be taking pictures. They're going to be doing all the analysis. So again, these are 2 outside support mechanisms we got from the Department of Transportation in Essex County to help us here. So we're following through on some of those plans we've made through the pedestrian summit we had last year.
Also, Mayor, I want to add that we had, DPW has installed new street signs on Wyoming and on Ridgewood. I think on Ridgewood too, yeah, that are larger than what's required because it's so difficult to see what street you're at. So, and they're reflective, so take a look at those. They were installed, I think, about a month ago.
Right. So we're moving forward with some of these pedestrian safety initiatives, and we'll just keep everyone informed as we do. Okay? And next up is the design of basketball courts. Ms. Adams, I guess you put this one on.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. We've been talking about basketball courts for a while, and I know Recreation Advisory has also been doing the same. At Engineering Public Works, we discussed locations as well as just the design. So the reality that we don't have a regulation-sized basketball court. I mean, we have regulation-sized baseball fields and regulation everything else, and I personally think it's insulting to our community of people who want to play or have leagues that we don't have. We have a half court here and this and that. Anyway, so we, at least the engineer and public works and some residents I've talked with, there is a desire for another basketball court. The location of this court has not been determined. But the design, we don't want to hang it up on arguing about the location, because the location will be determined at some point. In the meantime, we can at least approve funds that the Open Space Trust Fund Committee just voted to approve of up to $25,000 for the design of a full regulation basketball court. And so we can get, them going at the same time, and then we can delve into the discussion a little more about the location and where that should go and get recommendations. The engineer is looking at different spots in Maple Crest Park that borders Springfield Avenue, and also the pool parking lot behind the Rescue Squad building, or possibly in place of the Rescue Squad building. So there's a couple places we're looking at, and then that'll determine. But if I didn't want to hold it up any longer, and so the open space, we asked the engineer to apply for open space trust funds for the design aspect of it, and so that's what he did, and they approved it. So I'm asking this board to vote and also approve it.
Okay. Yeah, and I would support that. I would just mention that, one thing that our recreation director sort of, after we went through a lot of consideration of Maple Crest, is also recently proposed looking at DeHart as well.
Right. Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you.
So, and
because there's an underutilized.
Yeah, there is an underutilized area there near the parking lot, and we could, consider applying for, there may be certain grants available, through the state Open Space Trust Fund. Right. I think one thing we'd have to consider is currently the Maple Crest Park and DeHart Park are within Green Acres, and I don't think the property by the Rescue Squad pool parking lot is in Green Acres, so we would just have to consider that we would have to, if we're using Open Space Trust Fund for the design or for the construction of the court or anything like that, that we would have to put that on the Green Acres roster, which I'm not saying that I'm against that, but I'm just saying that's something that we would have to take in consideration. But recognizing that we're not ready to discuss location, any sort of decision yet, and that's still a work in progress, I'm certainly supportive of moving ahead with funds for design, so that when we decide on a location, we've already done some of that. Yeah, we can start done some of that preliminary work, and we're not then saying, okay, now let's go out and get a design. Right. So I would support this as well.
Okay, so moved and seconded to allocate the money for the design. How much is it? $25,000. A design of the basketball courts. Let's call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ms. Lourier?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, can we get a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move adoption of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I would second. Can I second it if I'm abstaining from two parts of it?
Probably not.
Then maybe
I'll
not.
second.
Good.
Any comments? Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Lourier?
Yes, with the exception of numbers 15 and 16.
Mr. Lembrick?
Sorry, did you mean to say 15 and 16?
17 and 18.
Oh, I'm, you know what? I'm looking at the wrong agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
The
they're
minutes
actually,
from last time.
there are no closed session minutes for
17.
For 18.
Go ahead.
I abstained from the minutes from the last
Mr.
meeting.
Lembrick?
I'm a yes.
Mr. McGee?
With the exception of abstaining from 17, 18, yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Thank you. So next public comment period. Is there anyone who wants to address the Township Committee?
Lofsky, I just want to thank the Township Committee for considering what the public's been giving you in terms of feedback and talking about the Citizen Advisory Committee that you're considering creating. It sounds like you are doing this thoughtfully and with the public feedback in mind, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can come to any meeting we
Yeah, you
have.
can say that at every.
Not what you said last time.
No, only if you're saying that, you can cut it.
Okay, we've received the tax sale. Did anybody get the tax sale report? We didn't get the
I
tax sale
didn't get a
report.
tax sale report.
We didn't get that tax sale report.
It says in the agenda we got it, but I
Yeah,
don't.
but we didn't get no tax sale report, just so we'll let you know.
Okay.
All right. Administrative reports, Mr. Manning, what's happening with the farmer's market?
Just going into the last, we're apparently getting a frost, so that will actually curtail the growing season. So we have 2 more weeks. I hear that they're doing having freshly dispatched turkeys for sale for your holiday. So they're there.
Dispatch?
Not on site, let's hope.
No, not on site.
What does that mean, dispatch?
Recently living, very fresh turkeys.
Recently deceased.
They're not
Formally
gonna be alive.
breathing.
Right.
They're not going to be alive at the market.
Come on.
Yes.
Okay. We're gonna get the,
Well, okay.
let's do it.
The second thing that I have to report is that Veterans Day, at least according to the federal government, is celebrated on Friday. However, I know you're going to talk about Veterans Day that we're going to have on Saturday for here in Maplewood. So we are open. I just want people to know that out there that we're open.
On Friday.
On Friday, yes. It's a floating holiday for us, so people take it at another time.
The banks, when do they close?
Federal holiday.
So,
Yeah.
They should be, no, they're closed on Saturday.
Saturday, they're closed on
Saturday.
They are
Yeah.
closed on Saturday.
It's actually the day.
I was actually.
just,
Wow, a banker? Which one?
okay. Anything else for Mr.
Website.
Website?
Okay, yes. The website has, we have gone to a new website, and I have to say that Sonia Viveros has really done a Herculean task in hunting down our domain name, because that was the thing that was, someone owned this domain name and he had died several years ago. It was a long story, but we're up and running. Check it out. It's really a very accessible. Information is there. It flows much quicker. Look at it on your devices, because it's basically what's there on the website is the same as you see on a computer, on an iPad, or an iPhone.
Yeah, the mobile compatibility is great.
Yeah,
It's secure.
it's amazing.
Is it a secure website this time? Is the domain secure?
Yes, she has solved that mystery.
Thank you.
Yes, okay.
You know what, Mr. Manning, I know we have our emails. Is it possible with our new phone system, because we're now on a computer phone system, that each township committee member can get an extension?
Yeah, we'll look into that. I'm pretty sure you can, yes.
Because then they can, because, we put the main number on, if somebody calls, there's no way to transfer it
Yes.
to someone, and now we get our messages by email.
Right, you get, right.
So it's a great way for, when we give out our cards, if we had an extension on there, people could call, leave a message, and we'll get that on
Yes.
email. It'll just be
We'll work on that.
There's like a sound file?
Yes, there's a WAV file.
You don't have to, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Okay, yes, we'll work on that.
We should be able to do that, right? Because it's unlimited, I think, the
We'll just
extensions.
check it out and how it has to be done. Right?
Don't forget to write.
Desiderio?
CFO about that.
I have 2 items, Mayor. Once again, I have a proposed subordination of a mortgage with regard to the our fund for homes. Again, a homeowner has requested that we subordinate it in light of a new mortgage. I've done all the due diligence. I think it's appropriate that you do it, and I'd ask that you consider subordinating a mortgage with regard to this particular property.
I move it.
Second.
Who's calling the roll?
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ms. Lawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
One more item. Ryan Bancroft, our court clerk, has noticed an inconsistency in an ordinance that we have and fines that are presently being charged. The fine for overnight parking is now $60, has been for some time. That has been approved by the court. Our ordinance still says $23. So with your permission, I'd like to have an ordinance put on that will make this consistent and show the $60 fine.
Well, we asked them to bring up all those fines, right? So
he found one and whatever. So
good.
Okay.
Let's move.
I've actually not paid $60.
I'm sorry. I hear you.
Do you need a motion for that?
No, I just need you to tell me okay, and I'll put it on
Okay.
for the next meeting.
Okay, everybody's okay with that?
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Anything from Mr. Dario?
Nope.
Okay, Ms. Fritzen.
So, first thing I want to report on is the volunteer appreciation dinner. That was a huge success. We had more participation. Every year it gets bigger and bigger. So,
Sorry, I missed it. Sorry, I missed it.
It's very good. Yesterday, Election Day, we had locally, the victors were Mr. DeLuca with unofficially 6,064 votes, Mr. Daffis unofficially with 5,679 votes. And overall, I would say it was a successful day. We had a few glitches early on. I don't remember having a polling place that forgets to open for 20 minutes and the poll workers can't get in. So that will be addressed. That was Morrow Church. They didn't have anybody on site to open up. We had a couple small problems with machines that were taken care of quickly. And I would say overall, it was a successful day for voters. Veterans Day, Mr. Manning mentioned, our Veterans Day is on Veterans Day Saturday, November 11th at 11 a.m. right here in this room. It's going to be bigger and better than usual. We're going to have a 35-piece band, being as it's a Saturday. And I would encourage you all to come. You all got the program today in the email. And looking forward to it.
It's a bright red colored program.
What?
It was red.
Red, yes. We go like the red. Thank you, Mayor.
And just thank you again for the volunteer appreciation day. You did a great job. Your team, everyone worked well. Then that the place was packed. It was really good. And one thing is, I was asked by some of the civic organizations that have volunteers if they can be included. So we ought to talk about that
We'll talk about that.
going forward.
We added more groups this year.
I know we did. I know.
You added more what?
Groups.
More groups.
Pretty soon you have to have it.
Pretty soon we'll need a bigger location.
Right.
Well,
We're gonna need a bigger boat.
you just don't have to bring their own, that's all. That'll cut down on the attendance. Bring your own sandwich.
Bring your own stuff.
Or your own food. Anything from Ms. Fritzen? Okay. Reports to elected officials. It's 10:40. We got to go into closed again. So maybe we can do this quickly. Mr. McGee.
Boom, really quick. Okay, all right. So this weekend coming up is a rent party extravaganza. We have the standard monthly event at the Woodland on Friday night. And also this Sunday is Cranksgiving, which is part food drive, part bike ride, part scavenger hunt. It's Sunday, this the 12th at 10 a.m. Starts at the Woodland. It's going to be a fun event. I'll be there. Mr. Limbrick will be there. I think the mayor will be there. We're going to ride some bikes and go get some food for some needy families. I also want to recognize that St. Joseph's Church is having a 7 p.m. on November 20th. It's a Thanksgiving service honoring and thanking our first responders in Maplewood. So all are invited and all are welcome. And finally, there is an open gym night this Friday at the Columbia High School, part of our mentor program. And also, I'll be having office hours at Uban, the Haitian restaurant, this Saturday. Come join me for lunch. get some good Haitian food, and let's talk about Maplewood. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mrs. Larrier.
No report, sir.
Ms. Adams.
No report, Mayor. Oh, one thing. I just wanted to tell everyone we had a exciting Jitney 20th anniversary celebration at New Jersey Transit at the station. And we had representatives from New Jersey Transit. We had Mayor Davenport, who was mayor at the time 20 years ago. We had Vicki Arlene and Barbara Novak, thank you. I've had a blank. Who really did all the legwork along with Councilman Mickey Stern, or Committeeman Mickey Stern back then, and Mickey Stern's widow was also there. So it was nice to remember back when there was one little van, and so we had a little celebration. And now we're up to coming up on 5 jitneys and jitney routes. So it's a model for other towns. That's all I have.
Mr. Lindbergh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wanted to just take a moment to congratulate Mayor DeLuca and Dean Daffis on their victories yesterday. For Mayor DeLuca, I believe this is your 7th.
Yes, it is.
Re-elected to a 7th term, well-deserved, and Mr. Daffis's first term. We're excited to have Dean join us. And I'd also like to acknowledge Elizabeth Baker, Tony Mazzocchi, both Maplewood residents, and also Robin Baker of South Orange for winning seats on the South Orange Maplewood School District's Board of Education. I'd also like to thank all of the candidates for Township Committee and Board of Education for running and volunteering for our community. Thanks to Mrs. Fritzen and her wonderful team for their hard work yesterday, helping everyone vote. And I want to talk a little bit about turnout here in Maplewood, and I want to thank our friends over at Engage Maplewood for helping out with some of these statistics. Turnout in Maplewood yesterday was fantastic. We had 44.4% voter turnout. That was the highest in Essex County of all the municipalities. Our neighbor South Orange was also in the top 4. They were 4th at 42.5%. And even more impressive is that we had, of all the districts in Essex County, hundreds of districts, our districts placed 1st, 3rd, 6th, 7th, and 8th. So 5 of the top 8 turnout districts in Essex County were right here in Maplewood. And we had 11 of the top 30, which means over half of the districts here in Maplewood were in the top 30 in Essex County. So I want to thank the voters of Maplewood for turning out in such big numbers yesterday. And I personally was very pleased with the results. So thank you for coming out. And hopefully we can continue to lead the county and be one of the leaders in the state in the years to come in terms of civic participation and electoral turnout. That is my report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Daffis and I are going to ask Phil Murphy for a new pair of shoes because we walked up and down this town getting the vote out. So it was great. It was a really great turnout. A couple quick items. The Maplewood Police Department is having an accreditation assessment, and they're inviting public comment. There's an opportunity on November 20th, which is a Monday, between 9 and 11 a.m. to call in at 973-761-7868. This is an opportunity for members of the community to just call in and talk about the police department. This is an assessment. There are assessors from the New Jersey Association of Chiefs of Police that are going to be spending a couple of days in the police department looking at the policies and practices, and the goal is to get the accreditation. There's 112 standards that they have to meet, and one of them is trying to understand how the community feels. So again, it's November 20th. I know it's a difficult time. It's a Monday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's 973-761-7868. Just want to mention, and I'll mention it again, that our next meeting As part of DCH Milburn Audi's commitment to our community, they are going to be investing millions of dollars in expanding their facility on Milburn Avenue. We also have secured from them a contribution of an electric charging station for Maplewood.
Nice.
And we are partnering with them to hold a Maplewood Job Fair. Going to be held on Wednesday, December 6th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the main library. They're going to have people from their HR department there to help people write resumes, talk about how to dress for success in interviews. Plus, they will actually be interviewed for jobs at DCH. There are jobs at DCH in Milburn, in Maplewood rather, at the Milburn Alley. And by the way, it's called DCH Milburn because DCH Maplewood is already taken by Maplewood, Minnesota. Believe it or not. Or Audi, Maplewood Audi is already taken. But DCH also has a facility in Bloomfield and in Verona. So there are jobs in this nearby area if people are interested. So again, it's December 6th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and I will announce it again as we get closer. I want to let people know that my office hours for this month are canceled. If you need to see me, please contact the clerk's office and we can set up a time for a one-on-one. We're going to the League of Municipalities. I was going to schedule it Monday, but something else has come up that I can't do that. So if you need to see me, they'll be canceled this month, but please contact the clerk's office or contact me directly. And lastly, we've been asked by the school district and some residents in the community to be a sponsor of, it's called City of Kindness and Wonder. There's a movie coming out called Wonder. It's coming out Friday. It's about the 5-year-old, it's a true story of Augie Pullman, a boy with facial differences who enters 5th grade. And he's attending a mainstream elementary school for the first time. And this Wonder Choose Kind City initiative involves mayors doing promotions meant to engage residents in making their neighborhoods kinder. So I assume we'll be interested in participating in something like this. South Orange is looking to do this, so we will work with them. The school board is on board, so we'll move it forward.
I'm in favor of kindness.
Okay. You're also kind to agree. With that, can we get a motion to go into closed? Mr. Fritzen, you have to read it first?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay.
Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, permits exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, whereas this public body is of opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township of Maplewood, County of Essex, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of any action upon the herein specified subject matter. General nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Personnel. It's anticipated this time that the above stated subject matter will be made public.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Larrier? Yes. Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, thank you.